Hello, crime enthusiasts, are you ready for another chilling investigation? The case of Rob Andrew. Brenda Evers was born on December 16, 1963, in Enid, Oklahoma. Her parents were Christians. The family often gathered around the dinner table, prayed together, and participated in church activities. Brenda grew up to be a quiet and calm girl. She did well in school and spent a lot of time at church helping others. While many of her friends were dating, Brenda patiently waited for her ideal partner. While in high school, she cheered for the school's soccer team. Brenda was a moral and humble young woman, just like her mother. She loved to dance but did not go to parties often. Brenda's goal was to be a devoted wife and mother, devoting herself to her family after marriage. At the age of 17, Brenda met Rob Andrew, her friend's older brother. Rob was older and in college. They quickly discovered that they had much in common. Although they were from different branches of Christianity, Brenda was Lutheran and Rob was Baptist. They both held conservative views, attended church regularly, and wanted to raise a large, happy family. Their friendship gradually blossomed into romance. Brenda then went to college in Winfield, Kansas. Despite being 125 miles apart, they tried to keep in touch regularly. To be closer to her lover, Brenda transferred to a college in Stillwater, Oklahoma, a year later. By the end of the summer of 1984, they married. Not long after, Rob received an attractive job offer in Houston, Texas. Although he was hesitant, Brenda convinced her husband to accept it. While Rob developed his career as an advertising executive, Brenda also completed her degree and found a job in the banking industry. Brenda loved the bustling life in the big city, with its tall buildings and vibrant nightclubs. Texas changed her a lot. She became more confident, started taking care of herself, dressed fashionably, wore makeup, and made many friends. However, Rob was not happy with these changes. He believed that a woman of faith should be more restrained. In addition, Rob began to feel homesick. So when he received an offer to return to the advertising agency in Oklahoma City, he happily agreed. Brenda did not support her husband's decision, leading to an argument between the two. In the end, they agreed that Rob would move to the new place first, and if everything went well, his wife would follow. After several months of living apart, the family reunited. In the early 1990s, Rob and his wife moved into a luxury home in Lansbrook. 9 months later, they had their first daughter, Tricity. Brenda quit her job to become a stay-at-home mom and raise the children. 4 years later, they had their son, Parker. Their family life seemed perfect, with love, children, home, and wealth. Rob and Brenda were married for approximately 17 years and had 2 children together. As a deeply religious couple, they raised their children with strong faith and moral values. They regularly attended church as a family and participated in charitable activities. From the outside, their marriage appeared happy and stable. However, in October 2001, their family life unexpectedly fell apart when Brenda left Rob and initiated divorce proceedings. After that, Rob stopped by their old home to pick up their children for the holidays as planned. That evening, Brenda met him at the door and asked him to fix a broken appliance in the garage. As Rob bent down to check, he heard footsteps behind him. As he turned around, he was shot and fell to the concrete floor. At around 6 p.m., emergency services received a call from Brenda. She reported that she was injured and her husband was dead. An ambulance was dispatched immediately. When paramedics arrived, they found a horrific scene in the garage. A man was lying in a pool of blood, dead from a gunshot wound. His wife, Brenda, had a less serious wound to her arm. Brenda's clothes were covered in blood, and she appeared to be in shock. Paramedics confirmed that she was indeed in shock. Brenda said that she had tried to give Rob first aid, but she thought he was dead. They noticed that the victim's hand was bandaged. After the incident, Brenda was taken to the hospital for treatment. Police began investigating the scene as soon as the ambulance left. They found a .22 caliber bullet in the wall and a shotgun shell casing, indicating that multiple weapons were used. Police also found the victim's wallet intact, ruling out the possibility of a robbery. To clarify the incident, they needed to interview Rob's ex-wife. At the hospital, Brenda explained the reason for her encounter with Rob. She said that while they were together, two masked and armed men broke into the garage. The attackers shouted something that Brenda could not hear. One shot Rob twice, and the other shot and wounded Brenda as she tried to run away. Both attackers then fled. Brenda did not know the identity or motive of the attackers. She believed that Rob was unlikely to have enemies because he was kind and helpful. Brenda admitted that she was scared, especially since there were children in the house at the time of the attack. However, Brenda's story was inconsistent. The police suspected that she was not telling the truth, especially when they saw that the children had not packed for the trip. Interviewing neighbors also did not yield any useful information. No one noticed anything unusual that night. To learn more about Brenda and Rob's personal lives, detectives decided to interview people they knew. It turns out that after the birth of their second child, the relationship between Andrew and Brenda became strained. Andrew often complained to friends and pastors that Brenda mistreated him and hated their marriage. In addition, a close family friend commented that the couple's feelings seemed abnormal. Brenda often expressed her feelings openly, even in front of strangers. Rob seemed to love Brenda too much, as he had forgiven her inappropriate behavior for a long time. Family friends all noticed that Brenda had changed significantly. From a normal housewife, she had become a woman with a more liberal lifestyle. These accusations were well-founded and were backed by clear evidence. Brenda seemed to be going through a midlife crisis. Her style of dress changed significantly. From a refined woman, she changed to wearing revealing clothes and wearing too much makeup. Not only that, Brenda also became secretive with her husband. She did not share where she went, who she met, or what she did. Eventually, Rob discovered that his wife was having an affair. In October 1997, Brenda began an extramarital relationship with Rick Nunley, the husband of a friend and former co-worker at a bank in Oklahoma. They dated for a year, then only communicated by phone occasionally. Brenda then began a relationship with James Higgins, a local store owner. At first, James Higgins was attracted to Brenda's style of dress and flirtatiousness. They began seeing each other regularly once or twice a week after Brenda gave him a hotel room key. The relationship lasted about 5 years. During this time, Brenda's husband, Rob, was completely unaware of the affair. However, he realized that their marriage was in trouble. Brenda hardly spoke to or spent time with Rob anymore. Despite this, Rob remained hopeful that things would improve and tried his best to keep his family together. In 2001, Brenda ended her relationship with James Higgins. This decision had nothing to do with her husband or their marriage. Instead, Brenda had gradually fallen into a life of debauchery and vice. 2 years earlier, a Baptist church had been built in Oklahoma City, largely thanks to Rob's contributions. There, Rob became a deacon, and his wife took on the role of Sunday school teacher. Outwardly, their family appeared prosperous and adhered to traditional moral standards. At that time, Brenda still maintained the image of a model wife. She enthusiastically taught the children basic lessons about religion and friendship. At the church, Brenda met James Pavitt, a married part-time teacher and friend of Rob's. Although James was a devout Christian, he was attracted to Brenda's charm. They began seeing each other in the spring of 2001. At first, they kept their relationship secret, but it gradually became more public. Everyone in the church noticed their closeness. Rob suspected his wife of having an affair, and the two had a big argument. When James divorced his wife, Brenda and Rob also decided to divorce. Although Rob still wanted to save the marriage, Brenda was determined to file for divorce. Shortly after this event, a mysterious call was made to Rob's office, and then a serious car accident occurred, believed to be an assassination attempt on him. Rob became suspicious of Brenda and James, so he reported it to the police. Rob did not oppose the divorce and agreed to the custody arrangement for the children. He even supported Brenda financially. So, what was the motive for killing him? The motive was money. James Pavitt, who was also an insurance agent in addition to teaching, had sold Rob an $800,000 insurance policy that summer, with Brenda as the sole beneficiary. As police investigated the attack on Rob's family, they discovered two important things: the relationship between Brenda and James, as well as a problem with the family's car brakes. As the events connected, Brenda's role in her husband's murder became clearer. Finally, the police also found a new suspect. It was Brenda's new lover, James Pavitt. 2 weeks before the garage incident, Rob went to the insurance company to remove his wife, Brenda, from the policy because she was unfaithful. James, the insurance agent, refused, stating that only the beneficiary, Brenda, could make changes to the policy. Not trusting James, Rob checked with the management. The investigation revealed that Brenda and James had attempted to falsify the policy by transferring ownership to Brenda. They had forged Rob's signature and backdated the changes. James's supervisor confirmed to Rob that he was still the owner of the policy and that only the insured could make changes to it. When James learned of this discovery, he was furious, as it led to his dismissal. Investigators learned that Rob had a 16-gauge shotgun when he left the house. During the search of Brenda's house, Brenda did not turn the gun over, and it was not found, which was quite strange. However, when they searched neighbor's house, Judy Gigstad's house, they made an unexpected discovery. A shell casing from the sought-after handgun was found on the bedroom floor, along with several .22 caliber bullets in the Gigstad's attic. The Gigstads were not home at the time of the crime, and there were no signs of forced entry. Gigstad's family confirmed that Brenda had their spare key. In addition, a key piece of evidence came from Joanna Larson, James Pavitt's daughter. On the day of the crime, she lent her father her car with the promise that he would have it repaired. However, when Joanna retrieved the car, she discovered that it had not been repaired and found a .22 caliber bullet inside. When she informed her father, he told her to throw the bullet away. Investigators also discovered that James had purchased a handgun the week before the crime. Therefore, they planned to question James and Brenda. On November 23, Rob's funeral was held. The case was confusing to the victim's family and friends. What was suspicious was that Brenda, her children, and James Pavitt were all absent from the ceremony. This absence worried Rob's relatives and the police. Apparently, those who did not show up had fled, perhaps assuming that the police were searching for the perpetrators. By that time, the suspects had been identified. The autopsy results were released. Brenda's account of the attack differed significantly from the forensic report. As the police had suspected, 2 different weapons were used in the attack. Rob and Brenda's injuries did not match Brenda's description. The first shot at Rob was fired from a distance with a shotgun, while the second shot was fired at close range with a .22 caliber pistol. Brenda's arm was also shot at close range with the same .22. By analyzing the location and shape of the bloodstains on his clothes, it was concluded that Brenda was near Rob when he was shot. The angle of the bloodstains matched the shooter's position, indicating that Brenda herself fired the second shot at Rob. After receiving the autopsy results, Brenda and James were officially declared suspects and wanted. During their escape, James and Brenda eluded the police for many days. The authorities warned the border guards that they might have crossed into another country. However, no trace of them was found. After some time, it became clear that the two had left the country, with the police suspecting they were in Mexico. To catch them, the authorities decided to freeze their bank accounts. Without money, they would eventually be exposed. And sure enough, 3 months later, James contacted his daughter to ask for money. However, he did not expect that his daughter was cooperating with the investigation. Joanna had doubt that her father was involved in the case. It was clear he was hiding something. Thanks to James's call, the investigation discovered the perpetrator's hideout in the city of Cancun. In February 2002, James and Brenda were arrested at the border and turned over to U.S. authorities. They were charged with first-degree murder and conspiracy to commit a felony. The children were placed in the care of their grandparents. After their arrest, neither defendant cooperated with the investigation. They pleaded not guilty and spoke only when their attorneys were present. James was the first to appear in court. The prosecution built a thorough case. They presented information about James's past as an army sniper and his ability to use a gun. His illicit relationship and the plot to murder Rob were also mentioned. His daughter's testimony and physical evidence were presented. Ultimately, the jury found James guilty and sentenced him to death. Brenda's trial was different from James's. Instead of focusing on the details of the case, the prosecutors presented information about Brenda's character and personal life. They called her former lovers to testify, portraying her as unethical and untrustworthy. When questioned about her motive for killing her husband, Brenda claimed innocence and asked to be released if people truly believed her. However, the prosecutors countered by describing her as someone who did not love her husband and killed him for personal gain. To reinforce their argument, the prosecutors presented items from Brenda's suitcase when she fled to Mexico, including lingerie and sex manuals. They questioned whether a grieving widow would act like that. During the trial, the defense team tried to portray Brenda as a victim. They mentioned that she was injured in the attack, but forensic experts determined that she had inflicted the injuries on herself. The defense also produced a confession letter from James, but a handwriting expert confirmed that Brenda had forged the document. A shocking revelation from James's attorney was that Brenda would be the beneficiary of his insurance policy if he died. This suggested that Brenda may have plotted to kill James the same way she did Rob. Or perhaps she hoped to prove her innocence and frame James so that after he was executed, she would still receive the insurance money. After 6 hours of deliberation, the jury found Brenda guilty and sentenced her to death. Both Brenda and James are currently on death row. Brenda has appealed repeatedly but has been unsuccessful. The crimes of Brenda and James were extremely serious. It is worth noting that they claimed to be religious and taught morality to children, which makes the case even more horrifying. Those who preach morality but do not follow it themselves are hypocrites and cruel. Such people cannot be trusted because they do not truly understand and live by moral principles. Welcome back, mystery lovers. Today's case is going to keep you on the edge of your seat. The case of Dalia DiPolito. On a warm afternoon in Bond Beach, Florida, a man named Mohammed came to the police station to Welcome back, mystery lovers. Today's case is going to keep you on the edge of your seat. The case of Dalia DiPolito. On a warm afternoon in Bond Beach, Florida, a man named Mohammed came to the police station to report a disturbing incident. He said that a woman named Delilah had approached him and offered to hire him to kill someone. Although Mohammed did not provide Delilah's last name, the Bond Beach police considered the information credible and began an investigation. They had to establish Delilah's full identity and find the husband she wanted to kill. With this limited information, detectives began an investigation to clarify the case and prevent a possible murder. To gather more information, the detectives decided to use the witness Mohammed to arrange a meeting with Dahlia. They chose the mobile gas station as the meeting location because, according to Mohammed, Delilah lived nearby. At the gas station, the detectives arranged several cars to monitor the meeting. Before Delilah arrived, they instructed Mohammed on what to say. They also attached a small recorder to Mohammed so they could listen in on his conversation with her. While monitoring the mobile gas station, the detectives unexpectedly witnessed a meeting between Mohammed and Delilah. Delilah's appearance made a strong impression on the detectives, as she did not resemble the usual image of someone who wanted to hire someone to kill her husband. Instead, Delilah wore a skirt and a tank top, looking very attractive. After the conversation, Delilah got into the car with Mohammed. At this point, Mohammed expressed his surprise, unable to believe that a woman like Delilah would lure him into a murder for hire. Mohammed asked Delilah if it was worth killing her husband. Delilah said yes, because she could not get a divorce. She was afraid that her husband would come after her if she tried to end the marriage. Delilah revealed her plan. After her husband was killed, she would go somewhere else, like Boca Raton, to create an alibi. Mohammed asked if anyone would suspect Delilah after her husband's death. She replied that no one would suspect her. The detectives were listening to a conversation between Mohammed and a woman. They were shocked to hear the woman calmly discussing hiring a hitman to kill her husband. This made the detectives shiver. As the conversation continued, Mohammed made specific moves on the woman. She showed Mohammed pictures of her husband so he could identify the target. The detectives were shocked by Delia's nonchalance about the consequences of her actions. She spoke so calmly that it sounded like she was discussing a normal business transaction, not planning a murder. However, detectives realized that they needed to gather more evidence to strengthen the case. She suggested to Mohammed that she would withdraw $1,000 in cash and pay him later. After concluding the conversation about hiring a hitman to kill her husband, she got back in her car and left the mobile gas station. Detectives followed her home to determine where she lived. Records showed that the address belonged to someone else named Dippolito, and police concluded that she had used a false name to hire a hitman to kill her husband, not Delilah as they had previously thought. Detectives ran a background check on the car Dahlia used to go to the gas station to meet Mohammed. They found that the car's registration was held by Mike Dippolito, Dahlia's husband. To their friends, Mike and Dahlia appeared to be a happy couple in love. They met when Mike was feeling bored and looking for a way to entertain himself. He surfed the internet and found a website that offered escort services. Mike decided to book a meeting, not knowing that this decision would change his life forever. When Mike's escort, Dahlia, arrives, he is immediately enchanted by her beauty. He finds her stunning and feels an attraction between them. They instantly connect and quickly fall into intimate conversation. Over the next few days, Mike and Dahlia's relationship deepens. They meet again and spend a week together. They have a great time together, and they realize that their feelings have gone beyond friendship. From there, Mike and Dahlia officially become a couple. After a few months of dating, Mike and Dahlia's relationship takes a significant step forward. During a visit to a local jewelry store, they unexpectedly looking at engagement rings. This leads to a deep conversation about marriage, a topic they had discussed before. Fascinated by the idea of building a future together, Mike decides to buy a ring for Dahlia. It was not only a gift, but also a symbol of his commitment to the relationship. Even though their relationship was moving forward quickly, Mike was still extremely happy in love. He believed that this was the right move for both of their futures. Before meeting Dahlia, Mike had a criminal record in 2001. He was convicted of theft, fraud, and wire fraud in Broward County, Florida. At the time, Mike was addicted to drugs and needed money. The court sentenced Mike to 2 years in prison and 28 years of probation. This long probation period was to give Mike the opportunity to pay off his debts. When Mike first returned home from prison, he had trouble paying his debts. Determined to solve this problem, Mike took a job as a cook at a restaurant for $350 a week. However, this was not enough to pay off his large debt. Mike wanted to improve his financial situation to pay off all his debts and ensure that he did not have to go back to prison. Fortunately, a friend introduced Mike to a new job at an office near his home, just 4 blocks away. This gave Mike the opportunity to move from his job as a chef to the field of email marketing, opening up better financial prospects. When Mike and Dahlia began their relationship, Mike was honest about his difficult past and current restrictions. He explained that he could not freely travel between states without permission. Dahlia, with her strong passion for travel, expressed her desire to explore the world with Mike. Realizing that the financial burden was hindering their dreams, Dahlia proposed a bold solution. She was willing to give Mike $91,000 so that he could pay off the remaining debt. This money would help them get out of debt and start a new life, free to travel like Dahlia had always dreamed of. At that time, Dahlia was working as a real estate agent and making a lot of money. With her stable finances, she was able to help Mike pay off his debt and clear his criminal record. Mike consulted his lawyer about how to handle the situation. The lawyer advised him to prepare enough money to be released from probation. After discussing, Dahlia and Mike decided to transfer the money to Dahlia's Bank of America account because it was the safest and most convenient way. Mike's joy about paying off his debt and getting married was quickly shattered. One day, he received a text message from Dahlia informing him that she had transferred the money to his lawyer. Mike contacted the lawyer to confirm, but was surprised to be informed that they had not received any money from Dahlia. 2 days after the transaction, the lawyer still has not received the money. Mike contacts Dahlia, asking her for information about the money transfer and a receipt for verification. However, Dahlia suspects that the lawyer has misappropriated the money. She tells Mike that she will try to get the money back. Meanwhile, Mike hopes that they can resolve this misunderstanding smoothly. On the other hand, the Boone Beach Police Department enlists the help of Sergeant Whitey Jean, an undercover police officer. When he meets with the detective in charge of the case, Sergeant Jean is informed that Dahlia is trying to hire a hitman to kill her husband. The detective tells him that Dahlia is waiting for a call from the hitman and asks Sergeant Jean to pose as the hitman to arrange a meeting with Dahlia. Sergeant Whitey Jean agrees to participate in the investigation by posing as a hitman. In this role, he contacts Dahlia and asks her to pay $3,000 up front and the keys to her house. The request for the keys was part of a plan to make Dahlia believe that the murder would occur at her home. However, Dahlia felt uncomfortable with the request. She contacted Muhammad, who had introduced her to the hitman, to express her concerns. During a phone call between Muhammad and Dahlia, the detectives overheard and were concerned that they might have scared Dahlia. They feared that Dahlia might change her plans and find someone else to kill her husband. However, on August 3, 2009, Dahlia met with Sergeant Whitey Jean in the CVS parking lot. Sergeant Whitey was working undercover, posing as a hitman. However, Dahlia did not have any money with her. Sergeant Whitey informed Dahlia that if he waited until after the murder to be paid, she would have to pay him $7,000 in cash. Sergeant Whitey Jean announced the assassination plan on Wednesday morning, citing the cover-up as a response to looting in the area. He revealed to Dahlia that he would stage a fake break-in to give the act the appearance of legitimacy. Whitey Jean made it clear that he intended to pretend to break into the house, then shoot Mike twice in the head. Sergeant Whitey Jean informed Dahlia that he would wait a few days before contacting her again after the murder of her husband. He explained that the police would be watching her closely after such a serious crime. Sergeant Whitey Jean emphasized that this wait was necessary to avoid suspicion and to keep the case secret. During the conversation, he also gave Dahlia the opportunity to back out of the hit-for-hire plan. But Dahlia asserted that she was absolutely certain and determined to carry out the plan to kill her husband, Mike. She revealed to Sergeant Whitey Jean that Mike walked his dog at a fixed time every morning and left the house unlocked when he left. This information was key to the plan to kill Mike. Dahlia also said she would be at the gym at the time of the attack, ensuring that she would not be home when Sergeant Whitey arrived to carry out the plan. Sergeant Whitey Jean asked Dahlia to be at the gym by 6 a.m. He announced that he would be at Dahlia's house at 6:30 a.m. After finishing his conversation with Dahlia, Sergeant Whitey Jean was shocked by her cruelty. Although he had met many people in his work, he had never met anyone as cruel as Dahlia. The detective thought that creating a fake crime scene at Dahlia and Mike's house was important to see Dahlia's reaction. On the day of the attack, around 5:30 a.m., Dahlia told Mike that she was going to work out. Mike agreed but found it strange because Dahlia had never worked out so early. However, he did not think much of it and continued with his normal morning routine. The detective followed and confirmed that Dahlia had gone to the gym. This provided the evidence the detective needed to continue with his plan. However, before he could proceed with setting things up at Mike and Dahlia's house, the detective needed to inform Mike of the current situation. About 30 minutes after Dahlia left the house to go to the gym, there was a loud knock on the door. Mike rushed to open the door and was surprised to see a group of police officers standing in front of the house. He was shocked and confused and asked what was going on. A detective walked in and told Mike some shocking news. His wife had hired a hitman to kill him. However, the hitman was actually an undercover cop assigned to expose Dahlia's plot. The detective further explained that the whole situation was an elaborate plan set up to catch Dahlia in the act of hiring a hitman to kill her husband. Mike was shocked when the police came to his house and informed him that his wife, Dahlia, had hired a hitman to kill him. After calming down, the detectives emphasized the urgency of the situation and asked him to leave the house immediately. They quickly took Mike to the police station for safety. The detectives created a fake crime scene at Mike and Dahlia's house. They put up police tape and turned on the police car lights to make it look like a real crime scene. After they were ready, a detective called Dahlia and told her that the police were at her house and needed to talk to her about a matter involving her husband. The detective asked Dahlia to come home and answer some questions. After speaking with the detective, Dahlia returned home and was shocked to find that her house had become a crime scene. Police tape surrounded the house and police cars were parked everywhere. When Dahlia asked the detective about the situation, she was informed that the police had received a report of a murder at her house, accompanied by gunshots. The detective then gave her the shocking news that a search of the house had turned up the body of her husband, Mike. This information shocked Dahlia. She burst into tears as soon as she heard the news of her husband's death. However, the detective, who was experienced in announcing the death, noticed that Dahlia's reaction was unusual. Although she appears to be crying, the detective does not see any tears on her face at the police station. The detective begins the investigation by asking Dahlia about the people who may have been involved in her husband's death. The detective's goal is to get Dahlia to admit that she hired someone to kill her husband. The detective tells Dahlia that her husband was shot twice in the head and died. Dahlia is confident that Mike will not open the door to strangers. She explains that Mike is currently on probation for securities fraud and is trying to complete his probation. However, this is difficult because the community is not supportive of Mike's upcoming release, due to the amount of debt he owes. Despite this, Dahlia insists that their marriage is stable. During the investigation of Mike's husband's murder, the police interrogate her. Mike watches the interrogation from another room. The detective informs Dahlia that they have the facts of the case and will begin investigating. They then led Sergeant Whitey Jean into the room, handcuffed, and asked Dahlia if she knew him or had met him before. Dahlia firmly denied any connection to Sergeant Whitey Jean. After the police escorted Sergeant Whitey Jean out of the room, the detective informed Dahlia that she was under arrest for attempted murder. The detective further explained that the man Dahlia had hired to kill her husband was actually an undercover police officer. As a result, Dahlia was arrested for her crime. While Dahlia was in custody, the police allowed Mike, Dahlia's husband and the victim of the attempted murder, to see her. When Dahlia saw Mike, she tried to call him back, but Mike refused, saying that he could not help her in this situation. In fact, Mike wanted Dahlia to admit to plotting to kill him, but she still firmly denied her actions. On April 26, 2011, Dahlia DiPolito's trial was held in Palm Beach County District Court. Dahlia was charged with conspiring to hire someone to kill her husband, Mike. During the trial, Mike testified against his wife. He testified for 3 consecutive days. Dahlia's defense attorney argued that the plan to kill Mike was just a publicity stunt for a reality television show. They claimed that Mike had agreed to participate and helped orchestrate the plot. However, Mike denied all things. He claimed that he had no knowledge of or involvement in any such plan. Mike stated that he had no interest in participating in a reality television show and would never waste money or put himself in danger for that purpose. After closing arguments, the jury deliberated for hours and ultimately found Dahlia guilty of solicitation of first-degree murder with a firearm. When the verdict was announced, Mike had mixed feelings. He was relieved that Dahlia was serving a 20-year prison sentence, a fair sentence for her serious crime. At the same time, he was relieved that he could finally move on with his life, knowing that justice had been served. After Dahlia was convicted of solicitation of first-degree murder with a firearm, her lawyers appealed. They argued that the jury's verdict had been influenced by an unofficial tip. Specifically, a juror had commented that Dahlia had tried to poison Mike's Starbucks drink. However, this information was never introduced into evidence at trial. By law, juries are only allowed to evaluate evidence that is formally presented in court. As a result, the Court of Appeals overturned Dahlia's conviction and decided that she was entitled to a new trial. Mike was surprised to learn that there would be a second trial for Dahlia, even though she had been convicted of conspiring to kill him. In December 2016, the state held a second trial, believing that they had enough evidence to prove that Dahlia had incited her husband to kill her. However, the outcome was not as expected when the jury could not reach a consensus. Ultimately, the judge decided to hold a new trial. Dahlia faced a third trial in June 2017. After the trial, it took the jury just 90 minutes to reach a final verdict. They found Dahlia guilty and sentenced her to 16 years in prison. In September 2019, Dahlia Dito asked the Florida Supreme Court to review her 2017 conviction. However, the court denied the request without comment. After Dahlia was convicted, her defense team attempted to take the case to the U.S. Supreme Court for review. However, in February 2020, the court declined to take it. Despite this, Dahlia DiPolito's attorneys told the press that they were undeterred and were still determined to overturn the conviction. They revealed plans to petition a federal judge for a third review of Dahlia's trial on constitutional grounds. The attorney said this was Dahlia's last chance to secure a new trial. Despite serving her sentence, Dahlia was respected in prison for her strong faith. She organized a Bible study group in prison, which was praised by her fellow inmates. Before going to prison, Dahlia had a young son who visited her regularly. The boy is now living with his grandmother until Dahlia completes her sentence. According to her lawyer, the separation has been heartbreaking for Dahlia because she misses her son very much. Hi everyone, thanks for returning. Let's unravel another perplexing mystery. The case of Graciela Garcia. Graciela Garcia was born on October 6, 1971, in Mexico. Her family was working class and they hoped to provide a better future for their children. As a result, her parents decided to move to the United States and eventually settled in Hermiston, Oregon. Graciela was too young to remember the hardships of the move. She attended Umatilla High School, a low-cost school where 66% of the student body was Hispanic. Graciela made friends easily and stood out with her outgoing. She later studied business at Blue Mountain College. However, since she was young, she has had a passion for hairdressing and has had the goal of owning her own hair salon. With passion and hard work, Graciela believed that her plans could come true with the right approach. By February 2006, she had become the owner of Carr's Beauty Salon. Thanks to her talent and charisma, she quickly became famous in society. Moreover, her professional image also contributed to the prestige of the salon. She is passionate about her work and has a deep understanding of new beauty trends. Thanks to that, she always has a loyal customer base. Some of her customers have become close friends and are often invited to her home. She is respected and loved by everyone in town. Her private life is also filled with joy and happiness. She was pursued by many men when she was young, but she only loved one. That man became her first love. They have two beautiful daughters, Annabelle and Gabriella, often called Gabby. However, that love did not last long. The man left the family. It seems that his feelings for her faded over time. Despite becoming a single mother, she did not feel hopeless. Instead, she focused on self-improvement and pursued a degree in cosmetology. After her divorce, Graciela met Romero Sanchez, a regular customer at the beauty salon where she worked. At first, their relationship was just a friendship. However, Romero later asked Graciela out. And she accepted. Gradually, their relationship became closer and deeper. However, when Graciela introduced Romero to her family, they felt uncomfortable because of his cold and distant attitude. Annabelle and Gabby, Graciela's two daughters, tried many times to connect with Romero, but he did not respond. Graciela's children were confused by such behavior, but they attributed it to personality differences. Graciela's partner seemed to be a strange and unapproachable person, which puzzled the people around her. They could not believe that a woman as full of life and fun as her could be so passionately in love with such a dry person. However, they still respected her decision. When Graciela announced her upcoming marriage, everyone showed their support and shared her joy. Especially Annabelle and Gabby, they wanted to see her happy and loved. On the wedding day, guests also noticed Romero's arrogance and conceit. Some thought he seemed too jealous when trying to steal all the bride's attention. When Graciela's young grandchildren came to congratulate the newlyweds, Romero treated them with contempt, making them feel uncomfortable. Afterwards, Graciela's relatives could not hide their true feelings about this man. Annabelle even openly stated that she did not consider him a stepfather and just wanted to maintain a normal relationship like other families. After the wedding, the Graciela family had two more sons, Arthur and Jacob. They moved in together at Graciela's house. Graciela's youngest son, Jacob, noticed that Romero began to act as if he were the sole owner of the house. Initially, Graciela tried to set personal boundaries, but because she did not like confrontation, she quickly gave in to Romero. He was hot-tempered and never gave in or apologized first. To avoid creating tension in the family, Graciela continued to give in to Romero. However, over time, Graciela began to realize that she had rushed into this marriage. In conversations with her relatives, Graciela confessed that she felt constrained and oppressed. Her husband controlled her and did not let her go anywhere alone. Despite this, Graciela never said she wanted to leave this abusive relationship. It seems she still loves him. Graciela's family gradually realized that she had become attached to the wrong man. Romero not only controlled Graciela but also lived off of his wife, much to her family's dismay. Romero was a skilled manipulator, constantly stalking Graciela, controlling her correspondence, and even threatening to break up the friendship between Graciela and her friends. He did not want to let her go anywhere, or sometimes he would show up unexpectedly, as if testing her loyalty. His jealousy became excessive and uncontrollable. She felt ashamed and self-conscious because of his behavior, and as a result, she limited her social life. She only communicated with her family and no longer connected with friends or colleagues as before. This seriously affected her work, as her profession required her to communicate regularly with clients and attend various events. Her friends and colleagues noticed a change in Graciela. She was no longer the cheerful and bright woman she used to be. She looked sad and tired, and she was clearly unhappy. Her children also noticed that she had changed in both her mood and appearance. They saw that she had lost her independence and confidence. After discussing it with each other, Graciela's family agreed that they did not like Romero. However, since he was Graciela's choice, there was not much they could do to change the situation. They could only respect her decision. Other relatives also expressed doubts about Romero, but no one knew how to help her in this situation. Graciela and Romero needed help with their relationship, and Gabby had mentioned this to her mother. However, Graciela believed that she would manage her personal life on her own. In 2018, Graciela decided to move her salon to her home for convenience. However, her family was skeptical as they had not heard about the plan for 12 years. Some customers commented that Romero's constant presence at the salon made them feel uncomfortable. Some people thought that Graciela moved the salon home to solve the problem, but others doubted that the idea came from Romero. However, Graciela was happy about the change and believed that working from home would bring her closer to Jacob and Romero. At the end of the year, she and her husband renovated a room into a beauty salon, completing it in May 2019. The salon closed shortly after, but Graciela's reputation remained intact, and rumors of her reopening attracted many customers, including new ones. Graciela was delighted with her career success, but became increasingly secretive about her personal life. However, after 17 years of marriage, Graciela and Romero decided to separate. Romero always kept in touch with their children and saw them regularly. Graciela and her ex-husband shared custody of their youngest son, while the other children were grown and living on their own, but they still kept in regular contact with their family and participated in family activities. Graciela went through the divorce with a calm and optimistic attitude. After the divorce, Graciela focused on developing her beauty salon and spent her free time taking care of her family and close friends. On the morning of November 9, 2019, Romero visited Graciela's eldest daughter, Annabelle, and reported Graciela missing. According to Romero, Graciela and he had been together the night before. However, when he woke up the next morning, he was surprised to find that she was no longer there. Romero tried to contact Graciela but received no response. Annabelle was shocked by the news and Romero's reaction. He cried and appeared distressed. This made Annabelle feel strange because Romero usually did not show emotions in front of them. Romero also said that Graciela had been acting strangely recently, even hinting that she might have found another man in her life. Annabelle felt that Romero's words were insincere and his tears seemed fake, which made her start to doubt his behavior and worry about her mother. Romero usually avoided communicating with his wife's children. But after a while, he changed and decided to connect with them. After Romero left, Annabelle decided to inform the rest of the family about what had happened. Graciela's family gathers to find out what's happening to her. Graciela's car was parked in the driveway. If she decided to leave Romero, she would definitely use her own car. Another thing that surprised them was the neatness of Graciella's house. Everything was perfectly arranged and in order, far beyond normal. However, this was completely contrary to Graciella's personality and lifestyle, because if she went somewhere, her belongings and accessories would be scattered all over the room. Normally, Graciella would spend a lot of time in front of the mirror choosing her outfit for the day. However, the fact that she went out without any jewelry worried the whole family, and they wondered why. As she walked around the house, Gabby noticed something strange. The large blanket had been put in the washing machine, something her mother never did. The blanket was too heavy and someone else had washed it, apparently Romero, which made Gabby suspicious. Romero did not explain this, saying that he did not pay attention to such details. But then people realized that several important items were missing from the house, including Graciella's passport, driver's license, and cell phone. This raised further suspicions about Romero's actions. On November 11th, Annabelle contacted law enforcement at the police station and discovered something surprising. Although Romero had known about his wife's disappearance since the 9th or possibly earlier, he had not notified the police. Therefore, Annabelle was the first to file a missing persons report to her mother. Another incident raised concerns about Graciella's safety. She asked Gabby to pick her up, but even though Gabby said it would take some time because of the distance, Graciella continued to ask. Gabby was surprised by this unexpected request for help. Graciella explained that everything was fine and that her request was just a result of an argument with Romero. When they met, Graciella appeared relaxed, smiling and asking her daughter not to worry. She believed that arguments between lovers were just a form of renewal in their relationship. However, after they broke up, Gabby remained uneasy and became increasingly worried about her mother. The investigation began after Annabelle contacted the police. This caused the relationship between Graciella's family and Romero to deteriorate. Romero seemed angry that Graciella's family had notified law enforcement about her disappearance. Romero gave an official statement about his wife's disappearance. He said that Graciella either wanted to be alone or that she had moved in with another man and would be back soon. That was his answer every time someone asked. However, the police did not ignore this report. Officers launched an investigation into the missing Graciella's disappearance, considering the possibility that she may have been a victim of a crime. They started by searching her house, where her relatives reported that only a few personal items were missing, without finding any other suspicious signs. The investigation expanded to include interviews with her children, Romero, and other close family members, including her ex-husband. However, no useful information was gathered from these interviews. While everyone expressed doubts about Romero's behavior, he cooperated fully with the detectives, allowing them to search his home, answering questions, providing his DNA, and taking a polygraph test. Despite this cooperation, there was insufficient evidence to prove his involvement in the case. Further investigation revealed that Graciella's phone last sent a signal near a bridge in Washington on November 9th at 12:30 p.m. After that, her phone was turned off. Her bank accounts and social media accounts showed no activity, suggesting that she had not accessed since her disappearance. Hundreds of witnesses were questioned, and all the places she regularly visited were checked, but no one had any information about her whereabouts. The investigators found her disappearance to be highly suspicious, as it seemed she had vanished without leaving any clues. For months into the investigation, the Hermiston Police Department announced that they had found no reliable information about Graciella's last whereabouts. Although Romero had not reported her missing, he was not accused of any wrongdoing. Graciella's family became increasingly frustrated with the lack of progress despite their constant contact with authorities throughout the incident. However, as time passed, these updates became less frequent and eventually stopped, forcing Graciella's children to take initiative and contact the police station themselves to inquire about the status of the case. In an effort to reinvigorate the search, Graciella's family turned to the media in March 2020, seeking public assistance and attention. They hoped that by sharing their story, they might gather new information. Graciella's daughter Gabby was mainly in charge of communicating with the press. She expressed her family's increasing frustration with the lack of progress in the case and criticized the police for not keeping them informed for such a long time. She urged investigators to focus more on finding her mother, Graciella, and to take a closer look at the suspicious circumstances surrounding disappearance. Graciella's family suspected something was wrong, as the condition of her belongings was strange and unusual in her home. However, it was unclear who would want to harm her, as Graciella did not appear to have any enemies. The family also believed that Graciella would not have left on her own, as she would have contacted them to reassure. Posters and flyers describing Graciella were scattered throughout the city in search of clues to the case. Graciella, who is 49 years old, Latina, 1.6 meters tall, 62 kilograms, and with dyed blonde hair. Local residents were also asked to be vigilant and report any information that might help the investigation. Her children were so concerned that they asked for a new detective team to take over the case, as they suspected bias in collaboration with a suspect, Romero, who was acquainted with the original investigators. The Graciella family expressed concerns about several inconsistencies in the investigation, including the fact that Romero's phone was turned off on the day of Graciella's disappearance. Additionally, Romero's calm behavior raised suspicions, as it didn't with the typical reaction expected from someone whose loved one has suddenly gone missing. As a result, the Graciella family demanded that the suspect be arrested immediately. Police Chief Jason Edmiston responded to allegations surrounding Graciella's disappearance, confirming that her case is being treated as suspicious and possibly involving foul play. However, he emphasized that this is just one theory and that the investigation remains impartial, driven by evidence. Edmiston also dismissed claims of social connections between Romero and law enforcement as baseless. Edmiston noted that the spread of misinformation has hindered the investigation. Certain information must be kept confidential, and authorities have sought assistance from the FBI. The police chief expressed frustration over public criticism of the police's actions. Separately, Gabby organized a fundraiser to hire a private detective, a move seen as a critique of the police's handling of the investigation. This perceived criticism suggested that the police were not doing enough to find Graciella. 1 year after Graciella disappeared, her family organized a memorial gathering. Here, friends and people who knew her shared stories about her lively and cheerful personality. They prayed for her safe return, lit candles, and later placed signs outside the police station, urging authorities to continue the search for Graciella Garcia. In September 2023, a major development in the case occurred when Romero Sanchez was severely injured in an attack and that required surgery. There was speculation that the shooter was Mason Garcia, Graciella's brother. The attack suggests that Graciella's family had become frustrated with the lack of progress in the investigation and took matters into their own hands, potentially leading to further tragedy. The disappearance of Graciella Garcia remains an unsolved mystery, leaving her family in a state of agonizing. This has significantly affected the health and mental well-being of her family. Living without knowing what happened to a loved one can be more challenging than coping with a confirmed loss. It remains unknown whether Graciella is alive or not. Her children continue to hope that the truth will soon be revealed and justice will be served to the criminals. Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of John Parker. John Parker was born in 1970 in Indiana, United States, to a middle-class family and have a brother. From a young age, John had a strong ambition to succeed. He valued being independent and continually sought ways to better himself, as well as looking for opportunities for growth and advancement. After graduating from high school, John began searching for ways to earn money. According to his brother, John's first job was as a waiter's assistant in a restaurant. However, he quit his job soon after, but the exact reason for his departure is unclear. Undeterred, John quickly found a new job that offered more freedom, allowing him to explore and develop his passion for pursuing a career in sales. John started working as a door-to-door salesman for Kirby vacuum cleaners. Initially, his family teased him, but he soon demonstrated his capabilities to everyone, and he also found his purpose in life. By the end of his first year, John had become one of the company's top salesmen, and he was eager to continue achieving more. John worked extremely long hours, typically between 12 to 16 hours a day. As a result, he became a top sales performer, earning recognition at company meetings. John's success also made him a source of inspiration and guidance for his fellow salespeople. During this time, he met Judy, a 20-year-old woman from a low-income family in Texas. Judy was born in October 1969. She was confident, extremely, and outgoing. Although John wasn't planning to hire any additional salespeople at the time, but she was able to convince John that she had what it took to achieve great success in sales. Judy's past was marked by significant life events. With her parents' consent, she had gotten married at the age of 14 and had 2 children, Christina and Daniel Hicks, but it ultimately ended in divorce. When she met John, she was determined to start a new chapter in her life. John decided to give Judy a chance, taking her under his wing as a mentor in vacuum cleaner sales. Not only did Judy prove herself as a valuable member of the sales team, but she also won John's heart. As time passed, they began to date. John's life was thriving, both personally and professionally. He has built a solid reputation for his sales and training abilities, and most importantly, he has the love and support of his wife Judy. John expanded on his experience by starting his own business in Michigan, specializing in selling and servicing Kirby vacuum cleaners. He also offered training sessions for salespeople, sharing his personal secrets and enthusiasm that had made him successful in the industry. John's company quickly rose to the top in the area, and he credited his success to Judy's support. After establishing his career, John and Judy got married in 1992. The couple had 2 daughters, Tiffany and Erica. As John's business continued to thrive, they relocated to better homes, providing their children with access to excellent schools, luxury cars, and regular vacations. Initially, John had a very good relationship with Judy's stepchildren, Christina and Daniel. Christina was a sweet girl, while Daniel was more energetic and mischievous. The family enjoyed a comfortable life, thanks to John's growing wealth. He openly showcased his success to motivate the young salespeople he trained, demonstrating the potential rewards of hard work and determination. However, as Judy's children entered their teenage years, problems arose. Christina associated with a group of friends who had unhealthy habits, and as a result she started drinking with them. According to some reports, Christina has also used drugs. Meanwhile, Daniel, 13, often appears angry and doesn't seem to fit in with his friends. On one occasion, Daniel took John's car and recklessly drove around the neighborhood with friends, damaging several mailbox posts. The next day, John visited each affected house, compensating the homeowners for the damage, to prevent them from filing a police report about the boys' actions. Around this time, John was also summoned to Daniel's school that the boy had misbehaved and they needed to discuss the issue. John and Judy's relationship became strained after he got into a physical altercation with Daniel. After 9 years together, Judy took her family to Texas to visit her childhood home and meet her brother. During the trip, Judy confided in her brother about her troubled marriage and John's mistreatment of her children. However, the situation was more complex. Judy's older children were misbehaving, and she took their side, which added to the tension. Things escalated when John suspected Judy of having an affair with one of his employees. John installed cameras in the office to gather evidence. When he obtained proof of Judy's infidelity, his life was turned upside down, and his demeanor changed drastically. He began to drink heavily, which led to intense arguments with Judy and rough treatment of their children. One incident involved his daughter Tiffany, who was beaten with a belt for not bringing her homework to school. When her teacher noticed the marks the next day, she reported it to social services. Before they arrived, John warned the four kids that if they wanted to maintain their luxurious lifestyle, they should say nothing about the beating. Consequently, Tiffany blamed her stepbrother Daniel. John's bad mood not only affected his family but also his employees and clients, who suffered from his outbursts of rage. To keep Judy away from her lover, John moved the family to an exclusive area in Crown Point, Indiana. Despite his hopes for a fresh start, things did not improve. Judy started to improve her appearance by losing weight and changing her look, while John let himself go, growing his beard, smoking, and wearing only jeans. He became increasingly distracted. The business struggled due to John's condition, nearly going bankrupt and forcing him to sell his boat to stay afloat. Office rumors swirled about Judy's alleged affair with Jeff, John's right-hand man, fueling more arguments. At one point, Judy told John she wanted a divorce, but it wouldn't be straightforward. John felt he had given Judy everything, rescuing her from poverty, accepting her children, and showering her with luxuries. When love turns to resentment, he began cutting off Judy's financial sources. John made it clear that if she left, she would leave with nothing, and he had a secret recording of her infidelity with the office employee. This was the situation at the start of 2003. The tension between John and Judy affected the children, whose behavior worsened. Even Tiffany was grounded during the holidays for starting a fire on school grounds with a friend. The arguments finally ended on Thursday, April 17, 2013, when John and Judy went out to dinner. They were likely looking for a way to resolve issues and reduce the tension between them. After dinner, the couple called home to check on their kids and told them they would be back soon. Then, Christina asked them to stop by the office because she had left a school notebook there. As John and Judy left the restaurant, John decided to bring the leftover dinner to Jeff, who was supposedly working late at the office. John and Judy arrived at the office, located in a deserted industrial area. Just before 10 p.m. John went inside to talk to Jeff, while Judy picked up Christina's notebook and returned to the car. A few minutes later, John came out of the office and opened the rear door on the driver's side of the car to look for something. Suddenly, two loud bangs were heard, and John collapsed on the ground. Judy and Jeff immediately called 911. Police and medical units arrived at the scene within minutes. Unfortunately, John, 33 years old, had been shot in the back of the head and was pronounced dead at the scene. When questioned by the police, Judy, who was inside the car when the incident happened, was unable to provide much information. Judy said she was sitting in the car when John came out of the office and opened the back door on the driver's side. Immediately, she heard two loud shots. Judy's reaction was to hide behind the seat. When she finally lifted her head, she caught a glimpse of a man in dark clothing running away from the car. Initially, it seemed like a robbery because John's wallet was missing. However, as investigators examined the scene more closely, they began to have doubts. John and Judy hadn't told anyone they would be there, which raised several questions. What were the chances of a random robbery in a deserted industrial are very rare. If the motive had been robbery, it's puzzling that the perpetrator would first kill John and then take his wallet. This is especially confusing since John was visibly wearing a valuable gold Rolex and other easily accessible jewelry. Typically, thieves would thoroughly search the victim's pockets in such situations. The fact that this didn't happen raises more questions than answers. 2 bullet casings were found at the scene, which supports Judy's account of hearing 2 shots. One shot killed John instantly, but there's no official information about the second shot. With many unanswered questions, investigators started work taking a statement from Judy. Judy reported that her husband had argued with an employee from his company prior to the incident and identified the individual. However, she couldn't provide any additional information beyond her initial statement at the scene. Jeff, who was inside the office, also couldn't offer any useful insights, as when he heard the gunshots and went outside, it was all over. Meanwhile, authorities informed Christina, a Parker resident, that her stepfather had passed away. With robbery ruled out as a motive, detectives turned their attention to John's circle of relatives and colleagues. They began with an employee who had allegedly argued with John, but the employee claimed they had resolved their issues amicably and had a verified alibi. The investigation expanded, include John's business partners, employees, competitors, friends, and family. Judy's behavior during the funeral surprised and puzzled many people, as she seemed cheerful and socialized with friends, which was unexpected given the circumstances. Her ex-husband was also seen casually reading a newspaper at the funeral. For days after the murder, police brought in 15-year-old Daniel for questioning because he was accused of hiring gang members to kill his stepfather, John. When questioned, Daniel admitted to paying someone to hurt John, but claimed he only wanted him injured, not killed. The police arrested one of the young men that Daniel had hired, but they were released after their alibi checked out. Daniel was also released after 9 days due to lack of evidence and his status as a minor. Later, it was discovered that John had problems with Judy's children, which led to further investigation into Daniel and raised suspicions about Judy's 17-year-old daughter, Christina. When questioned, Christina denied any involvement, and this lead also went nowhere. However, investigators were left wondering who was providing the money for these schemes, and they suspected Judy was the source. Further investigation showed that Judy and John's relationship had gotten much worse before he died, and Judy's affair was discovered. However, sources revealed that John had no plans to leave his wife and was trying to save their relationship. Judy's main reason for targeting her husband seemed to be financial gain, as detectives found that John had 2 life insurance policies worth $1 million. After John's death, Judy tried to claim this money, but the insurance company initially refused to pay due to the ongoing investigation. Receiving the insurance money becomes even more complicated when John's father suspects Judy of being involved in his son's death. Despite these leads, the case stalled due to lack of concrete evidence. Over time, the John family household underwent substantial transformations. Judy was rarely at home, as she was busy with her new partner, Jeff, who was John's trusted manager. In Judy's absence, Christina and Daniel took care of Tiffany and Erica. Later, Judy and Jeff moved out of state with Tiffany and Erica, while Daniel went to live with his biological father. Christina, who was pregnant and had a boyfriend, stayed in the house. Although the investigation had stalled, authorities kept the case open, regularly reviewing the files in hopes of finding new leads. Their persistence paid off when they came to question some of Christina and Daniel's classmates. These schoolmates admitted to selling a firearm to Christina and Daniel. This information prompted detectives to investigate a piece of land owned by the family that Christina used for target practice. Upon inspection, several bullet casings were found. Laboratory analysis revealed a crucial clue: the bullet casings matched those from the crime scene where John was killed. In 2007, a colleague who was a narcotics officer provided additional information. The narcotics officer had been tracking Christina's ex-boyfriend, who was involved in a drug case and was arrested, to request a lighter sentence. Christina's former boyfriend revealed a conversation he had with Judy. In this conversation, Judy mentioned that her son Daniel was the one who fired the fatal shot that killed John. When confronted with this new information, 21 years old, Christina, who was linked to the weapon used in the crime, began to cooperate. She admitted to buying the weapon and calling John and Judy on the night of the incident. She had asked them to stop by the office, claiming she needed to pick up forgotten homework. Christina confessed to being part of a plan to kill John, with her brother Daniel designated as the shooter. When Daniel was 19, he was found and arrested in Arizona. Daniel was shown new evidence about the shooting and Christina's statement. He admitted to shooting John, but said his mother, Judy, was the one who planned the whole thing. Daniel said Judy had forged checks from her company to get the $7,500 to hire someone to kill John. However, when the people she hired took the money without doing the job, Judy told them to buy a gun for Daniel to use instead. Daniel also said it was Judy's idea to make up a reason for leaving the house that night by calling about homework. He said he shot John once in the head, and the second shot was an accident that happened while he was looking through John's pockets for his wallet, as his mother had told him to do. Daniel was also told to come back home without telling his younger sisters what had happened. His sister Christina helped by keeping the girls busy watching TV. Daniel said Judy convinced them to commit the crime by telling them they were being abused by John. And Judy promises them a better life with more money and freedom. It was also discovered that Judy had previously attempted to kill her husband. She had tried to poison his food, which resulted in John being briefly hospitalized with what was thought to be food poisoning. By the end of 2007, Christina and Daniel were formally charged with murder and conspiracy. Christina pleaded not guilty to conspiracy and was released on bail. In March 2008, Daniel, then 20 years old, pleaded guilty to conspiracy to kill his stepfather, John. As part of a deal, Daniel agreed to admit his guilt and testify against his mother. The prosecution agreed not to charge him with murder, but he still faced a prison sentence of 20 to 25 years. Daniel claimed that when he was 14, about a year before the incident, his mother and sister asked him to help kill John. His mother gave him and his sister money to buy a pistol, black clothing, gloves, and a mask to wear on the day of the crime. She also instructed him on what to do, including showering after the crime to remove gunpowder residue. Judy took responsibility for disposing of the evidence, including the gun, clothes, and her husband's wallet. In July 2009, 6 years after John's death, Judy turned herself in and pleaded guilty to conspiracy to commit murder. She admitted to planning, executing, and covering up the crime. The prosecution asked for a sentence of 28 to 35 years in prison. Judy, almost 40, was sentenced to 33 years in late August 2009. Daniel was sentenced to 23 years in September, and Christina received a 5-year sentence in October. Press reports state that Daniel was released from custody in 2017. He then chose to keep a low profile. Christina served 4 years of her sentence and was released in 2013, but she tragically died from a drug overdose. This case was driven by greed. Although Judy was successful, her greater desires led her to terrible crimes. Judy's actions not only destroyed a successful business owner but also had a profound impact on her 4 children. 2 of them ended up in prison, and the younger ones were left without their parents once again. Hello again, true crime fans. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Isla Reynolds. Isla Reynolds was born on April 4, 2010 in Waterville, Maine, USA. She is a beautiful girl with blonde hair, blue eyes, and a cute smile. Her parents, Trista Reynolds and Justin DiPietro, had a brief relationship in the summer of 2009, which resulted in Trista becoming pregnant. However, Justin suspected that he was not the father of the child. When Trista gave birth to Isla, Justin took a paternity test in July 2010, which confirmed that Isla was his daughter. As a result, he was ordered by Child Protective Services to pay child support in December of that year. Trista and Justin agreed that Isla would be raised by Trista. Trista and her daughter live in Portland. It wasn't until mid-2011, after Isla's first birthday, that Justin began visiting her. He lived an hour and a half away, and Justin would visit Isla during the day. Trista and Justin agreed that Justin could take Isla out, but not stay overnight. After a while, Trista got a new boyfriend, Raymond. Trista became pregnant, and in 2011, the family welcomed a new member. Trista would raise both children. Everything changed on October 13, 2011, when Trista met with Child Protective Services. The details of the complaint that led to the meeting remain unclear, but it is known that Trista had a substance abuse problem. That day, officials gave Trista a choice. Trista would go to rehab, or she would lose custody of the children. Trista immediately entered a 10-day rehab program and left her daughter with her mother and sister. Trista was determined not to lose custody. By October 2011, Justin had seen Isla about 5 to 10 times. However, just 4 days after Trista began rehab, on October 17, Justin and his family decided they wanted to take custody of Isla. Justin's mother, Phoebe DiPietro, contacted Child Protective Services and was approved to adopt Isla. Child Protective Services quickly notified Trista's relatives of their decision. After being granted permission, Justin and his family picked up Isla but did not know her exact address. Child Protective officials provided the location through police officer Charles Weaver, who accompanied Justin and Justin's mother Phoebe to the home of Isla's aunt, Jessica. Justin's mother Phoebe waited in the car while Justin and the police entered the house to pick up Isla. A tense situation occurred. Isla's mother Jessica begged the police not to take Isla away and warned that she would not hand over the child to anyone. The police observed that Isla was very happy, constantly laughing and playing. However, when Justin appeared, Isla began to cry and tried to move away from him. Despite this, the police officer still handed the child over to Justin. When Isla was handed over to Justin, she struggled and screamed. She even tried to bite the officer. Child Protective Services supervisor Charles was told by the officer that Isla hated her father and that they could not give the child to Justin. But Charles said that it was not his decision. He was just there to carry out Child Services orders. For Justin to have formal custody of Isla, he would have to get the consent of Isla's mother, Trista, or go through a court process to have the child approved by a judge. In this case, there was no agreement or court process. Instead, the Child Protective Services supervisor's decision to place the child was valid. Child Protective Services supervisor Charles gave custody of Isla to Justin. He then took Isla to the house in Waterville where he lived with his 47-year-old mother, Phoebe, his 24-year-old sister, Alicia, and Elisha's daughter, Gabriella. Justin, 25, lived in a large room in the partially finished basement, while the rest of the family lived upstairs. During this time, Trista called Justin every day to talk to Isla. On October 20, 2011, while Trista was in treatment, a meeting was held to discuss Isla's case. Attendees included Child Protective Services, 2 doctors, Trista and her sister Jessica, and their attorneys. Justin also attended the meeting by phone. The meeting resulted in an agreement that Isla would be returned to her mother on October 22, 2011, immediately after Trista completed her drug treatment program. In addition, Justin agreed to take Isla to the treatment center on the 21st to visit her mother. Initially, things went well for Trista. However, the decision was reversed. In her desperation to get her daughter back, Trista called Child Protective Services several times to ask them to help enforce the agreement. Unable to reach them, Trista attempted to negotiate with Justin to reach a temporary agreement. Under the agreement, Justin would continue to care for Isla and Trista would be allowed regular visits. On November 12, 2011, Justin took Isla to the emergency room. After a doctor examined her, they determined that Isla had a fractured elbow. According to Justin, the accident occurred the night before, November 11th. It was raining at the time and Justin believed that he had slipped and fallen on her while holding her on the porch. Initially, Justin thought that she was not seriously injured because although she was crying, she seemed fine. However, it was not until the next morning that Justin noticed that Isla had injured her hand, so he took her to the hospital. By the following Monday, the orthopedist concluded that surgery was not necessary and that Isla's injury would heal on its own. A week later, on November 26, during Isla's third visit, the specialist said that Isla's condition was improving and that she was slowly recovering. Trista was at the hospital to monitor her daughter's health. Never thought that this would be the last time Trista would hold her daughter in her arms. From that moment on, things went from bad to worse. Tired of fighting over custody, visitation rights, and even the right to talk to her on the phone, Trista filed a lawsuit to gain custody of her daughter. On December 15, 2011, Trista filed a lawsuit for custody of Isla. Custody of Isla was awarded to her just 2 days later on Saturday, December 17. Justin called the police in the morning to report Isla missing from his mother's house, where he was staying with his girlfriend Courtney Roberts and sister Alicia. Justin assured them that the police had put Isla to bed the night before and that when they woke up, Isla had disappeared early that morning. Trista travels to a coastal town in Maine to visit her boyfriend Raymond. She falls asleep on the couch while Raymond's father, Robert, drives. When Robert received a call from Trista's father informing him that Isla was missing, Robert was shocked and found a suitable place to stop the car and wake Trista. Trista was still sleepy, but when she heard her father's voice herself, she began to understand that she had no idea where her daughter was. In desperation, Trista changed direction to look for Isla. The trip to the police station lasted an hour, but for Trista, it felt like a century. She called Justin several times to find out what had happened, but there was no response. When they got to the police station, both Trista and her father-in-law Robert gave statements. After about 30 minutes, Trista's father arrived at the police station with them, angry and upset. Justin called 911 on Saturday morning at 8:49 to report Isla missing. He said he last saw Isla the night before at 10 p.m., when his sister Alicia checked on Isla before going to bed. However, when they woke up the next morning, they discovered that Isla had disappeared from her crib. Justin suspected that an unknown intruder had taken Isla. News of Isla's disappearance quickly spread to the police. The sheriff told the media that the case was being actively investigated and their goal was to find Isla at all costs. Police continued to search the house for more clues. On Sunday, December 18th, police dogs were deployed and searched the area around the house where Isla was. Trista's house also underwent a thorough search. On Monday, December 19th, the FBI requested assistance in the search. By this time, 75 people from various agencies were involved in the search. The state police had seized 2 vehicles. One was a 1996 Ford Explorer, owned by Justin, and the other was a silver car, owned by Justin's girlfriend Courtney, who was also present on the night of the disappearance. On Wednesday evening, Justin made his first statement to the media. He was calm and claimed he did not know what happened to Isla. Justin also said that he and his family would support the investigation and do everything possible to find Isla. Justin said that Trista had agreed to let him raise the child. Justin also said that Trista was incapable of caring for Isla. As of day 10, a $30,000 reward has been offered for anyone who can provide a lead to Isla's rescue, and 330 leads have been followed. The operation also involved about 50 volunteers from the Search and Rescue Association. the sheriff has transferred the investigation to the state police's Major Crimes Unit. At that time, an announcement was made that the case was no longer a search for a missing girl but was being treated as a criminal investigation. In the early days, Justin tried to avoid the media but later appeared more frequently. During an appearance on the Today's Show, Justin claimed that Isla had been kidnapped and wanted the kidnapper to return Isla. When asked about Justin's silence in the early days of Isla's disappearance, he justified himself by saying that he thought Isla would return. He also claimed that the police had advised him to stay away from the press. The police explained that this was only told to him at first. Later, the police encouraged Isla's parents to continue to appear in public. In late January, police revealed a major discovery. Isla's blood was found in multiple locations throughout Justin's home. In his 1996 Ford Explorer, they discovered a child seat in the back with Isla's blood on the left shoulder strap. In Isla's bedroom, police found blood on some of Isla's princess pink sneakers on the floor next to the crib, as well as on the doll's face and arms. This suggests that Isla may have tried to clean the blood from her mouth with her toy. Additionally, a blood stain was found on the living room sofa. Most of the blood stains were concentrated in the basement. A pool of Isla's blood stained the center of the mattress that Justin shared with Courtney. Justin's sneakers were also found with Isla's blood on them. Police also discovered blood splatters on the cement floor around the bed and on the walls. These splatters matched Isla's height. Additionally, experts determined that some of the blood splatters in the house were likely caused by Isla coughing, suggesting that Isla's injuries were both internal and external. This suggests that Isla may have been severely injured and may have been brutally attacked. Police said the bed sheet was used to clean Isla's blood. When they learned this information, Trista and her family were shocked and could not believe it. Police warned them that the evidence that was about to be revealed would be even more horrifying. Luminol tests were performed on the house, revealing blood stains that were not visible to the naked eye. Photos taken at the scene left Trista in great pain. After viewing these photos, she left the police station in a state of panic. The police said there were more photos to show her, but Trista refused to see them. She said she had enough. According to reports, when police showed Justin and his family the photos, he had no reaction. After learning of the police information, Trista shared with the press that despite her feelings of grief and helplessness, Isla's father, Justin, Alicia, and Courtney were still walking down the street as if nothing had happened. In September 2013, Trista wrote a bombshell letter to the press about the evidence and photos she had been given by the police. She was tired of waiting and wanted to rekindle public interest in Isla's case. In the spring of 2016, a group of journalists went to Justin's mother's house. Alicia opened the door and the journalists asked about the blood evidence. Justin's mother explained that Isla was lactose intolerant and had been vomiting. However, a quick internet search shows that common symptoms of lactose intolerance are gas, bloating, abdominal pain, and diarrhea, while nausea and vomiting are listed, but they are not the most common symptoms, let alone vomiting blood. Then, in 2017, at Trista's request, a judge officially declared Isla dead. Based on her father, Justin, reporting that Isla had gone missing on December 17, 2011, Trista and her attorney then filed a wrongful death lawsuit against Justin. By that time, Justin had disappeared, and he and his attorneys denied any wrongdoing, arguing that there was no concrete evidence. Earlier this year, 2023, a judge granted Trista's petition to include Phoebe and Alicia in the wrongful death lawsuit. Justin is facing civil charges for murder. Additionally, Justin faces charges of breach of parental duty of care for a minor. Both Trista and her attorney know that they will not receive any financial compensation from Justin. That is not the goal of the lawsuit. Their goal is to get information and facts out. There are many strange things about Isla's disappearance. While Isla was with Justin, he called the friend who sold him a $25,000 life insurance policy on Isla a few weeks ago. It is worth noting that Justin stayed at this friend's house while detectives investigated Isla's disappearance. Claimed that Justin had not been involved in the child's life during the 9 months of pregnancy and when Isla was just over a year old. Trista also revealed that she had received strange messages from Justin on the day he brought Isla home. He mentioned being afraid that someone would try to kidnap or take Isla away. The last time he said something similar was around December 11th, 6 days before Isla was reported missing. After Isla went missing, the messages became more surprising and confusing. The end of the case. Poor Isla is still not found. Those responsible for Isla's death. Still no punishment. Hello, crime enthusiasts. Are you ready for another chilling investigation? The case of Marta del Castillo. Marta del Castillo was born on June 19, 1991, in Seville, Spain, to parents Eva Casanova and Antonio del Castillo. At the age of 17, Marta was a normal high school student like everyone else. Then her life changed completely. On January 24, 2009, Marta was in the middle of a conversation with her best friend, Sylvia Fernandez. She abruptly ended the conversation, explaining that she had to leave quickly because her boyfriend, Miguel Carcano, was waiting for her downstairs. Marta told Sylvia that she needed to talk to Miguel to clear up some issues in their relationship and promised to fill her in on everything when she returned. Marta ran into her father in the hallway and he advised her against getting on Miguel's motorcycle. In response, Marta just gave her father a light kiss on the cheek. She left her home at 5:30 p.m., and as the hours passed and she failed to return, her family started to worry. Marta's mother reached out to several people, and they all gave the same answer: Marta was probably with Miguel, who would likely know where she was. However, when they tried to contact Miguel, he didn't answer their calls. As a result, Marta's father decided to visit Miguel's house. Despite ringing the doorbell multiple times, no one answered the door. They eventually got in touch with Samuel Benitez, a close friend of Miguel's who claimed to have seen Marta that night. According to Samuel, Miguel dropped Marta off at his house at midnight, which was plausible considering it was only 11:45. Marta's family became more worried, and at 2 a.m. that morning, they reported her missing to the police. At that point, they had no idea that Marta's disappearance would become one of the most highly publicized cases in the country's history. 4 hours after Marta's disappearance was reported, the police identified Miguel Carcano, Marta's boyfriend, as a suspect. Despite this, a third report was filed at 1:30 p.m. But the authorities failed to take immediate action. The family grew increasingly frustrated with the delay. However, 17 hours after the initial request for help, the police initiated a search for Marta. As time went by, Marta's family took matters into their own hands and started collecting statements from Marta's relatives and friends. They also organized a press conference on January 27, 2009, and initiated a campaign to find her. A large protest took place in Seville the day after Marta's disappearance, with 2,000 people demanding her safe return under the slogan, "We are all Marta." A second demonstration on February 7 drew around 3,000 people, and the case received widespread media attention. After 21 days of searching, the police finally found Miguel Carcano on February 13th. The 20-year-old confessed to Marta's murder and revealed that he had dumped her body into the Guave River near his apartment. However, he claimed he did not act alone and implicated Samuel Benitez as an accomplice in disposing of the body. Samuel accepted responsibility for his role in the crime. Further investigation led to the identification of additional accomplices, including Francisco Javier Garcia Marin, aka El Cuco, a troubled minor, Francisco Delgado, Carcano's brother, and Maria Garcia, Francisco Delgado's girlfriend. All 5 suspects were arrested and interrogated, but their statements were inconsistent. Meanwhile, a thorough search for Marta's body in the river began. On February 16, Miguel repeated his statement to a judge, claiming he had only admitted to the crime due to police pressure and was not involved in Marta's murder. Miguel Carcano changed his testimony on March 18, claiming that he and El Cuco had violated Marta with a knife before strangling her. He then took Marta's body to Delgado's house and disposed of it in a garbage container. However, Marta's father accused Delgado's girlfriend, Maria Garcia, and theorized that Marta's body may have been destroyed, as Maria Garcia's father worked at a biological waste crematorium. Despite this theory gaining media attention, the police continued searching for Marta's body. On November 16, 2009, El Cuco was moved to a supervised apartment because he had exceeded the maximum time allowed for confinement. He was awaiting trial, which took place in February 2011. El Cuco was acquitted of abuse and murder charges due to insufficient evidence, but was sentenced to 2 years and 11 months in a juvenile detention center for covering up for Miguel. The trial for the 4 defendants Miguel, Samuel, Delgado, Maria Garcia involved in the case began on October 17, 2011. During the trial, Miguel Carcano admitted to hitting Marta with an ashtray during a heated argument, which led to her death. He also revealed that his previous statements about abusing Marta were false. The investigation revealed inconsistencies in the stories told by Delgado, Maria Garcia, and Samuel. They claimed to have no knowledge of Marta's whereabouts after her death. They alleged that Miguel fabricated the entire story to reduce his guilt. However, forensic analysis uncovered incriminating evidence. On November 22, 2011, the forensic police discovered traces of Marta's blood on Miguel's jacket. A mix of Miguel DNA and Maria Garcia's DNA was also found on a roll of fabric tape. Additionally, a DNA match from Delgado and Maria Garcia was detected on an extension cable, believed to have been used to strangle Marta. This was surprising, given the accused had consistently maintained they had only been at the crime scene early in the morning and had no knowledge of the incident. When confronted with the new evidence, Maria Garcia was accused of violating Marta's body in attempting to cover up the crime. A detailed analysis of the crime scene revealed up to 5 fingerprints on 3 alcohol bottles, with 1 belonging to El Cuco. As the investigation drew to a close, the 4 suspects were under intense scrutiny from the public. Their trials were heavily guarded by the police, and the prosecution presented a substantial case against Miguel, Samuel, Delgado, and Maria Garcia. The trial involved 90 witnesses, including national police officers and experts. The prosecution also presented 30,000 pH monitorings, crime scene photographs, DNA evidence, and other items found at the house on Leon 13. The trial sparked a massive public outcry, drawing large crowds that pushed against the police barrier. The public requested to view Marta's body and also wanted to catch a glimpse of Miguel, the accused. Despite Delgado and Maria Garcia attempting to conceal themselves with hats and sunglasses, however, they were still unable to escape the crowd's attention. A woman approached them, shouting insults, while others tried to remove their sunglasses and pushed them forward, forcing them to reveal their faces to the surrounding crowd. During the trial, El Cuco's mother gave an interview with her face covered, insisting on her son's innocence and stating that neither she nor El Cuco had any knowledge about Marta's body. Despite being labeled a liar by journalists, she received €10,000 for the interview. A key witness then came forward, a taxi driver who had given Delgado a ride on the night of the crime. The driver explained that he had been extra cautious with his passengers, as a colleague had been murdered recently. He recalled picking up a bald, bearded man matching Delgado's description, who had a plastic bag and stared at him intently. The driver stated that he dropped Delgado off on Leon's 13th Street, exactly where the crime took place, and charged him €8 for the ride. However, Delgado's defense lawyer questioned the driver's statement, pointing out that the fare for the 2-kilometer ride should have been €5, not €8, which cast doubt on the driver's testimony. Marta's parents took the stand and described the immense pain they were experiencing due to the situation. They had to quit their jobs, start taking psychiatric medication, and even develop depression. Their other 2 daughters, Marta's sisters, were also going through a terrible time. The jury's verdict in January 2012 did not bring the family the satisfaction they were hoping for. Miguel was the only person responsible for Marta's murder and was sentenced to 21 years and 3 months in prison. Additionally, he was banned from living in the city where Marta's family resides for the next 30 years. He to pay part of the trial costs and compensate Marta's parents with €280,000 for the moral damage caused by her murder and disappearance. Each of her sisters was also awarded €30,000. In contrast, Delgado and Samuel were released due to lack of evidence placing them at the crime scene at the time of the murder. However, the following year, they demanded that Marta's family pay for the trial costs, adding to the family's distress. Marta's father expressed his intention to seek justice beyond Spain's borders, as he believed the country's system was outdated. He even considered taking Marta's case to Strasbourg, home to the European Parliament and the European Court of Human Rights. In December 2011, Marta's mother wrote a heartfelt letter to Miguel, who was in prison at the time. She asks him to return Marta's body so they can end the long suffering they have endured. She longed to give Marta a proper burial, where she could visit her, bring flowers, and talk to her. Unfortunately, the letter went unanswered. On January 24, 2012, 3 years after Marta's disappearance, demonstrations took place in various Spanish cities and towns, demanding justice for the young girl. As a result, Miguel faced threats from fellow inmates and attempted to take his own life. He was then transferred to a specialized therapy unit where he had limited contact with the outside world, including no visitors or phone calls. During his imprisonment, Miguel created multiple versions of the crime, with as many as 7 different accounts. This led to several lawyers withdrawing from his case due to inconsistencies. In his latest testimony, presented in 2013, he implicated someone close to him as the perpetrator of the crime. Miguel described an argument between him and his brother, Delgado, over the mortgage for their house at Leon 13. The dispute began when Miguel sent a letter to the family stating that he no longer wanted to cover for Delgado. Miguel stated that a disagreement over a fraudulent loan led to a physical confrontation. The situation became violent and Delgado allegedly threatened his younger brother with a weapon. When Marta intervened, she was fatally struck with the butt of Delgado's gun. After the incident, Delgado made a phone call, but the recipient and the content of the conversation are unknown. Delgado then left the house, leaving Marta's lifeless body behind. El Cuco arrived, and Delgado asked for his help in disposing of the body. They used a wheelchair to transport the body to the Mahalla farm in Laneda, where they buried Marta. At first, Marta's parents believed Miguel's story and were grateful to him for telling the truth. They requested that the investigation be reopened, this time focusing on Delgado. However, the prosecution and the judge did not find Marta's statements credible. Marta's father visited Miguel in prison, asking for his cooperation in finding Marta's body. In exchange for Miguel's help, Marta's father offered him a deal. Upon his release from prison, he would give Miguel the house located at Lawn 13, which he had previously purchased. The search for Marta's body became one of the most expensive in the country's history, involving extensive land and sea searches. It seemed impossible for Miguel, Samuel, and another person to transport Marta's body on a motorcycle without incident. During the reenactment, the body fell off the moment the engine started. After Miguel claimed that the body was thrown into a trash bin, the search shifted to the local landfill, which receives all the area's waste. In order to find any relevant clues, the search team estimated that they would need to remove approximately 40,000 tons of waste from the landfill due to the large amount of time that had passed since Marta's disappearance and the massive amount of waste at the landfill. The search for Marta's body lasted 32 days but was unsuccessful. Miguel, the accused, gave investigators 4 different locations where evidence might be found, leading to multiple new searches. However, the searches were hindered by a lack of funds, and at one point, the then Interior Minister Alfredo Perez had to pause the search due to financial constraints. In April 2013, Miguel pointed to Delgado as the real murderer and provided another location where Marta's body could be found, this time near the city of Lake, Canada. Despite having lost credibility due to his previous false versions, a new search was conducted. Miguel went with the police to the area and gave them a general idea of where he claimed to have buried Marta's body in 2009, along with Delgado. The police excavated the soil of 6 farms, focusing on areas with recent earth movements. A total area of 10,000 square meters was scanned, but unfortunately, nothing was found. All the searches were unsuccessful, and at the request of Marta's parents. The search was halted until 2015. The public ministry requested that the defendants compensate the Ministry of the Interior for the costs incurred during the search, amounting to $66,329. In a new development, an individual named Oscar, who claimed to be a criminal, approached El Cuco's, Rosalia's mother, and pretended to seek a confession. However, his actual intention was to infiltrate and secretly gather information. Over time, Oscar and Rosalia developed a close relationship, meeting every 2 or 3 days and speaking daily on the phone. Rosalia trusted Oscar enough to give him the keys to her house, and they shared secrets and took long walks on the beach together. He gained her trust and affection. Oscar even convinced Rosalia that they would leave the country together once her son's, El Cuco situation was resolved. Meanwhile, Oscar secretly recorded 600 hours of conversations between Rosalia and those around her over a period of 2.5 years. In October 2011, El Cuco was granted temporary release from the juvenile center, where he was being held for covering up for Miguel. During one conversation, Oscar asked El Cuco if he thought the police were following him. El Cuco replied that were, and that the police were trying to find out where they had hidden Marta. This statement incriminated El Cuco and revealed his involvement in Marta's disappearance. Realizing his mistake, El Cuco quickly tried to retract his statement, claiming he had done nothing wrong. Oscar played along as if he hadn't noticed. However, in other recordings, El Cuco made fun of the police's efforts to find the body, and Rosalia criticized the investigators for not examining her phone records closely. Although Oscar worked diligently to record conversations, the 600 hours of recorded material was not presented as evidence in court. It wasn't until 13 years after Marta's disappearance, in 2022, that the recordings led to results. On May 26, 2022, a large crowd of mostly neighbors from Marta's family gathered outside the courthouse to demonstrate their support for a new trial. Rosalia and El Cuco arrived at the courthouse, protected by police. El Cuco was fully covered, wearing a hoodie, sunglasses, gloves, and a mask. Rosalia wore sunglasses, a mask, and a headscarf. In 2011, El Cuco claimed he wasn't at the scene of the crime on Lyon 13th Street. El Cuco said he had gone home around 11:30 p.m. with friends and met his mother's partner, Oscar, who was taking out the trash. Oscar then went upstairs to his apartment and stayed there for the rest of the night. Rosalia claimed she had gone out for drinks with Oscar around 11:30 p.m. and returned home around 1:30 a.m. on January 25th, finding her son asleep. El Cuco admitted that on January 24th, Miguel contacted him for assistance after killing Marta. Miguel requested his help in burying Marta's body, along with Samuel. They used Rosalia's vehicle to travel to Lyon 13, where Delgado is also there. During this time, Rosalia, El Cuco's mother, stayed at a bar until 4:30 in the morning. Upon returning home, she found her son missing. In the end, El Cuco and Rosalia were charged with perjury for hindering prosecution. As a result, El Cuco and Rosalia were sentenced to 2.5 years in prison on June 9, 2022. The judge also imposed a fine of €1,144 on each of them, as well as ordering them to pay €30,000 in civil liability to Marta's parents. Despite the sentencing and fines, Marta's parents were more concerned with finding their daughter's body than seeking monetary compensation. In the same year, the investigative judge allowed an expert to access the mobile phones of Miguel and Marta. Notably, Miguel gave his consent for his phone to be examined, believing it would reveal evidence pointing to Delgado as the actual perpetrator. The primary objective of the investigation was to locate Marta's body, which remained missing. 13 years after Marta's murder, the civil court decided to close the investigation into the search for her body in November 2022. The court declared the investigation period had expired because no new significant evidence had been found. Marta's parents eventually accepted that Miguel would never disclose the location of their daughter's body. Welcome back, mystery lovers. Today's case is going to keep you on the edge of your seat. The case of Diogo Goncalves. Diogo Goncalves, born in 1999 in the city of Albura, Portugal, is an only child in a poor but hardworking family. His family made a living mainly from the unstable tourism industry. His parents always considered Diogo a good son. Those who knew him described Diogo as kind, responsible, hardworking, reliable, and very friendly. He enjoyed making friends and was close to his family. Diogo attended high school in his hometown. After graduating, he began studying computer science. To pay for his studies and living expenses, Diogo applied for a job at McDonald's in 2015, at the age of 16. When he was 17, his life suddenly took a major turn when his father suffered a stroke and fell into a vegetative state. That same year, while Diogo and his mother were trying to cope with his father's difficult situation, another tragedy occurred. Diogo's mother, who had always supported him in his studies and upbringing, was involved in a traffic accident. While she was on her way to work at the shopping mall where she worked as a cleaner, a car hit her, dragging her for several meters and causing her to die from her injuries. Although the driver fled, the police identified him and brought him to court. While Diogo awaited the verdict on the perpetrator of his mother's death, he had to move to a medical facility to receive the necessary care. His aunt, concerned about Diogo's situation, invited him to live with her, but the two had a serious disagreement. After a few weeks, they could no longer live together. Diogo told a friend about his situation, and the friend's parents offered him a room in their house in the Albufeira neighborhood. Here, Diogo was close to friends and people who helped him feel at home. Despite his young age, Diogo has shown an excellent ability to handle and overcome difficulties with patience and optimism. In 2017, at the age of 18, Diogo graduated with a degree in computer technology and completed a 6-month internship at Villa Vita Park, a top 5-star hotel. Diogo's abilities impressed the directors, and they offered him a job at the hotel as a technician. In 2018, Diogo decided to accept the offer and left the fast food chain where he had worked for almost a year as a shift manager. He entered a new phase of his life, envisioning a future filled with opportunities that would help him rise above the hardships he had experienced. After working at the company for a while and contemplating brighter days, he decided to buy a car. Diogo got along well with his colleagues, especially a girl he had a crush on, Maria Malvero, a 19-year-old hotel security guard. Maria Malvero was born into a normal family and, like Diogo, has gone through many hardships. Her mother suffered from mental illness, and her father left when she was very young, leaving her never to see him again. Maria, who works in security, became interested in martial arts and started practicing karate. She dreamed of becoming a police officer but was rejected by the academy because of her tattoos. This frustrated her, and she decided to join the Seer Info training course, which specializes in training security guards for the private security sector. Diogo has feelings for Maria and has expressed them openly to her from the beginning, but she does not reciprocate and maintains a cold attitude. Diogo is very fond of Maria, so much so that he turns down an attractive job at the Sheraton hotel chain in Lisbon just because he does not want to be away from her. He often brings her meals while she is on duty. Over time, Diogo and Maria became close, and people around them saw them as a couple, although there was no romantic relationship between them. Maria told Diogo that she did not want a relationship with him because she had just gotten out of a toxic relationship with a naval officer. However, she kept in touch with Diogo, causing him to harbor hopes of a future with her. Diogo did not give up hope and always tried to be close to her and please her. One day, Diogo was devastated when he accidentally saw a video on social media of Maria kissing another girl. Diogo was upset because he thought she should have told him that she didn't like boys, which was why they would never be together. Diogo's best friend, Fabio, tried to reassure him by saying that girls sometimes do that, but Diogo didn't believe him and insisted that Maria had lied to him, which was why she refused to be with him. Despite his disappointment, Diogo and Maria remained friends, and Maria continued to accept his gifts and invitations to dates. Diogo tried to take her home several times, but she always told him that her roommate had a jealous boyfriend and she didn't want to let another man into her apartment. Time passed, and in December 2019, Diogo was informed that he would finally receive compensation for his mother's death, which had occurred 3 years earlier. After receiving the sum of €70,000, the young man decided it was time to buy a house so that he would no longer have to pay rent. Diogo shared the news of his mother's insurance money with Maria. A few weeks later, Maria decided to quit her job at the hotel. She said that she could no longer bear the comments of her colleagues about her alleged relationship with Diogo. Maria also justified it by saying that she wanted to spend more time with her mother, who needed more attention because of her mental illness. At that time, Diogo had no reason to doubt Maria's words. However, later events showed that her decision to quit her job at the hotel was for darker reasons, and that is when the third character in the story, Mariana, 20, appears. She works as a nurse at the hospital and has a stable relationship with Maria. Maria and Mariana live together at Mariana's parents' house, as they are not yet financially stable enough to have their own house where they can enjoy their relationship. This is exactly Maria's plan when she learns about the large amount of money that Diogo will receive. From that moment on, Maria begins to get closer to Diogo. It turns out that Maria has shared information with Mariana, and together they decide to trick Diogo into gaining access to his bank account data and steal the money he received. The problem arises when one day, after being rejected by Maria several times, Maria suddenly tells Diogo that she wants to spend a romantic evening with him. This was truly a gift for Diogo. He couldn't believe his ears. After waiting so long, the thought of being with the girl he loved made him extremely happy. The meeting was set for Friday evening, March 20th, 2020. Diogo was delighted and had no idea why the girl suddenly changed her mind. As soon as Diogo entered, Mariana gave him the orange juice she had brought herself, but the drink contained an unexpected ingredient, 3 ampoules of diazepam, a central nervous system drug with anti-anxiety and sedative effects. Mariana was the one who suggested using this substance, having stolen the drug from the hospital where she worked. Mariana's plan was to anesthetize Diogo, access his bank information, and possibly manipulate his fingers to bypass the phone lock. Mariana is said to have waited in a car outside the house while her friend carried out the plan. She even texted Maria several times to see if the drug was working, as it took longer than she had anticipated. The situation inside the house became increasingly tense. Diogo did not understand what was happening and began to get anxious. Maria then tried to calm him down by promising to dance erotically, but first, she had to tie him to a table. After being in that position for a few minutes, Diogo panicked and asked Maria to let him go, but she became aggressive and began to beat Diogo. Using her martial arts skills, Maria overpowered Diogo, knocked him to the floor, and wrapped her arms around his neck, preventing him from breathing. According to Mariana, Maria then told her to go inside the apartment, and when she entered, she found Diogo lying on the floor. Mariana asked Maria what happened and criticized her for going off plan. The original plan was just to steal the key and take his money. When Diogo was unresponsive, Mariana performed CPR. However, when he regained consciousness, he became very agitated and tried to attack Mariana. In response to Diogo's reaction, Maria overpowered him by grabbing him from behind, throwing him to the floor, and strangling him again. Diogo lost his life at the hands of the girl he loved. His body was found in Maria and Mariana's living room, and soon after, they began their evil plan. They cut off his thumb and index finger to unlock his phone, log into the mobile payment app, and transfer money. This process lasted for several days due to the daily transaction limit at that time. Since Diogo was scheduled to go to work the next day, Maria and Mariana devised a plan to prevent Diogo's co-workers from discovering his absence. Maria and Mariana impersonated Diogo to text one of his co-workers. The colleague received a message from Diogo's number, saying that he would not be able to come to work and needed a replacement. However, this message seemed like an unannounced absence, which was unlike Diogo, who did not like to change shifts, so the message felt strange to the colleague. The colleague then asked Diogo if there was a problem and was told that everything was fine. The conversation with the hotel staff and people close to Diogo continued throughout Friday and part of Saturday, but these messages were increasingly uncharacteristic of him. On Saturday morning, Diogo's boss received a text message saying that he would not be returning to work because he had met a French woman and was moving in with her. This story seemed very strange to the boss because Diogo was a responsible person and would never quit his job so suddenly. In search of answers, the boss started calling Diogo, but he did not answer. He then received another message saying that he was not well enough to talk on the phone. Diogo's boss replied that he could only calm down if they could talk. He wanted to hear his voice and his explanation for what was happening. The reactions of Diogo's relatives to the messages Maria and Mariana sent convinced the girls to change their plans to explain their boyfriend's sudden disappearance. They decided to make it seem as if Diogo had decided to end his life and planned to dismember his body to get rid of the evidence. Maria later claimed that they were inspired by the TV show Dexter, about a forensic scientist who kills criminals and evades justice by removing traces of his crimes by dismembering his victims. After carrying out their evil plot, they stuffed Diogo's body into a trash bag and put it in the trunk of their car. They went to an ATM and shopped at a mall, where their hugs and laughter were captured on security cameras. They then went to a resident's house to begin dismembering the victim. Finally, Maria and Mariana placed Diogo's body in a black bag and put the rest of the body in a container. Meanwhile, at Mariana's parents' house, Diogo's friends launched a campaign to report him missing and contacted the authorities. They had to wait the required 48 hours to officially declare him missing. Maria and Mariana then left the house. Maria drove Diogo's car to the cliffs near the San Vicente Lighthouse in Cabo. Mariana followed Maria in her car. At around 2 p.m. that same day, Mariana threw Diogo's body off the cliff. She then left Diogo's car nearby. They thought that this way they could make it look like Diogo had committed suicide. Maria had no idea that instead of falling into the sea, the body would get stuck on a rock. They then left together in Mariana's car. They drove about 7 kilometers in 12 minutes to the Inferno Dago waterfall in the town of Tavira, where they threw Diogo's remains into the water. Shortly thereafter, Diogo's car was discovered in a parking lot near the Cabo de São Vicente lighthouse. According to multiple sources, 2 laptops were found in the car. Police were called to the scene and conducted a search on both land and sea. As a result, the body of a young man was discovered, partially covered by a black trash bag. At the same time, at another location on the coast, a French couple was stunned to discover Diogo's head. Diogo's hands and feet were also found after a thorough police search. Investigators said the circumstances of Diogo's death were strange. He was brutally murdered despite being a quiet person who did not associate with people of questionable reputation. Investigators could not find any hostile forces against Diogo. The police continued to investigate and soon discovered that Diogo had received a large inheritance after the death of his mother. Through the wire transfer investigation, they discovered that a large sum of money had been transferred from Diogo's account to Maria. Detectives tracked down Maria to find out why Diogo's money had ended up in her hands. Maria tried to convince the police that she had killed Diogo because he had abused her. Maria claimed that was the reason she had left the hotel before the incident. However, when police examined text messages between the victim and Maria, they found this was not true. Maria said that she and Diogo had become close after she left her job. During her first meeting with the police, Maria claimed that she was the only person responsible for planning and carrying out the shooting. Maria insisted that Mariana had nothing to do with the crime. However, Mariana's testimony contradicted Maria's. Mariana explained that Maria said she wanted to rob Diogo of his money and intended to kill him. Mariana said Maria wanted to make him suffer so that he would give her his bank account password. The evidence gathered by investigators was enough to convict Maria and Mariana. Detectives had Diogo's phone records, cell phone records, and ATM surveillance video. Maria and Mariana were arrested on April 1, 2020, and appeared in court in June of that year. The judge followed Maria's account of the events, and Maria pleaded guilty while repeatedly denying Mariana's involvement in the case. She said Diogo's body had been in a suitcase in a car parked in the garage for 2 days, and that's where the remains were dismembered. The judge then asked Mariana where she was when Diogo's body was dismembered. It was notable that the joints of the body were separated with great precision. All eyes in the courtroom were on Mariana, who was also a long-time nurse. Mariana answered all the questions and said that everyone knew she worked at the hospital, so they suspected that she was the one who dismembered the body. She further explained that using the internet, the matter could be cleared up. The judge ordered Maria and Mariana to be detained because this was a serious crime under the law. The crime was committed in a cold, calculated, reckless, and extremely cruel manner. A few months later, the trial took place on February 24, 2021. In her testimony at the trial on February 26, 2021, Maria stated that she initially sought revenge on Diogo for his violent behavior but did not intend to kill him. She admitted that her goal was to humiliate him. Maria also confirmed that her friend had no connection with Diogo and did not know about the murder. Maria argued that her actions were not motivated by Diogo's money. In addition, Maria and Mariana attended the trial together but avoided looking at each other. It was rumored that after their arrest and imprisonment, they ended their relationship. On April 27, 2021, the court delivered its verdict. Maria was found guilty of aggravated murder, complicity in indignity to a corpse, robbery, unlawful access, fraud, carjacking, and illegal possession of a weapon. She was sentenced to 25 years in prison and ordered to pay €265,000 in compensation to Diogo's father. Mariana was acquitted of murder but convicted of desecration of a corpse, complicity, and fraud. She was sentenced to 4 years in prison for these charges. However, she was released because the charges she was convicted of did not require pretrial detention until the final verdict was delivered. The court determined that Mariana's attempt to revive Diogo showed that she had no intention of killing him. The judge took into account Mariana's confession, in which she accepted full responsibility for her actions. Despite this, the Portuguese public disagreed with the verdict, considering Mariana as guilty as Maria of the crimes against Diogo. After the verdict, Mariana left the court through the back door, where her father, who had attended all the hearings, was waiting for her. Neither Mariana nor her father would speak to reporters. Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of Suzanne Morphew. Suzanne Morphew was born on April 11, 1971, to Jean and Adrian Alexandria. She grew up with 2 brothers, David and Andrew. Those close to her knew she was a special friend, known for her intelligence and thoughtfulness. In 1998, while still in high school, Suzanne met Barry Morphew. After 6 years of dating, they got married. Barry initially pursued a baseball career, signing with the Toronto Blue Jays, while Suzanne pursued a degree in education at Purdue University. However, after a severe injury cut his sports career short, Barry transitioned into horticulture. Suzanne had 4 years of teaching experience when Barry started his own business, and the company gradually grew over time. The couple had 2 children, Mallory and Macy. They led an idyllic life in Indiana but faced a setback when Suzanne was diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma. Despite this challenge, Suzanne successfully battled cancer twice. The family eventually moved to Mayville, Colorado, in 2018 in search of a fresh start and to be near their daughter Mallory, who was attending Western State University. The Suzanne moved to a beautiful 7-acre property that allowed Barry to pursue his love of hunting. He continued working as a contractor and also became a volunteer fireman. Suzanne, on the other hand, retired from her teaching career and devoted more time to her church and a new hobby, sports mountain biking. To outsiders, the Suzannes seemed like the perfect family. However, but they had their share of problems. These issues were finally revealed on May 10, 2020. Monday, May 10, 2020, was unlike any other Mother's Day celebration at Suzanne's house. While Suzanne was home alone, her husband Barry and their daughters were out. Barry claimed he had a landscaping appointment in Broomfield, about a 3-hour drive from home, and their children went on a camping trip. They all planned to return home in the evening to celebrate Suzanne's special day. However, when Mallory and Macy messaged their mother to wish her happy Mother's Day, they didn't receive a response. This was unusual because Suzanne was very active on social media. The girls expected her to be checking her phone for updates, especially since a friend's daughter's wedding was taking place and Suzanne would likely want to see photos. After waiting a few hours without hearing back, the girls grew concerned. They asked their neighbor, Martin Ritter, and his wife for help. Around 4 o'clock or 4:30 p.m. that day, Mrs. Ritter visited the Suzanne house and found it empty. She called Barry to explain the situation and he instructed her to look for Suzanne's mountain bike. If the bike was missing, he told her to contact the police. That's exactly what she did, and soon the police arrived at the Suzanne residence. Barry and their daughters returned home, they anxious to know news of Suzanne's whereabouts. A few hours into the search, the police found a crucial clue. Deputies discovered Suzanne's mountain bike in a steep ravine near the home. The location hinted that Suzanne might have been involved in an accident, but the bike and the surrounding area showed no signs of a struggle. Notably, there were no skid marks from the brakes, no damage to the bike despite its fall down the ravine, no bloodstains, and the nearby lawn appeared untouched. This evidence led the deputies to conclude that the bike had been deliberately placed in the ravine. When they shared this information with Barry, his reaction was unusual. As the investigation into his wife's disappearance proceeded, Barry shared many more implausible stories. As the investigation progressed, his behavior made it obvious that he didn't truly care for his wife. This led to unanswered questions and speculation about Suzanne's disappearance, leading many to suspect Barry's involvement. Barry gave details about his mountain lion story in a secretly recorded conversation with YouTuber Tyson Draper. Notably, Barry was absent from the search parties for Suzanne, organized by her brother Andrew. Andrew doubts Barry's story and offers another possibility: Suzanne actually went missing on May 9th, not on Mother's Day as Barry claimed. It was also discovered that Suzanne's helmet was found 1 mile from their home, in the same direction Barry's truck had traveled that morning. Investigators initially considered this an odd coincidence, but it became more significant when they discovered it was in the opposite direction of the construction site he was set to visit that day. In his initial interview, Barry said he woke up at 4:30 a.m. to an alarm clock and immediately left for Broomfield. However, telematic data from his Ford truck showed he drove 1 mile west before heading to the construction site. When confronted with this data, Barry explained that he was scouting elk earlier that morning. He then anesthetized them and sold their antlers, which was his habit. However, the officers pointed out a flaw in Barry's story: he couldn't have spotted the elk at 4:30 a.m. if he was just waking up. To address this, Barry changed his story, saying he didn't set his alarm for 4:30 a.m. and got up on his own. When asked about the day of Suzanne's disappearance, Barry described it as one of the best days they had had after a long time. He said that morning, he worked briefly with a co-worker in Salida and then returned home early. After that, he went on a hike with Suzanne, followed by a grilled steak dinner and intimacy. Barry stated they went to bed together. However, it is essential to note that Barry is not a reliable source of information. During the police investigation into Barry, it was discovered that he had lied about the whole thing that happened that night. The first signs of deception were uncovered by investigators on May 9, 2020, when they reviewed the telematic data from Barry's vehicle and his phone records. Although Barry had indeed spent the afternoon and evening with Suzanne, the details did not match his initial story. One of the discrepancies occurred between 10:42 and 10:47. According to his phone data, Barry's movements around the property were unusual. When questioned by investigators about this inconsistency, Barry claimed he was probably hunting chipmunks with tranquilizers at the time. It was also revealed that Barry had switched his phone to airplane mode at 2:47 p.m. and left it in that mode until 10:17 p.m., which further raised suspicions. Additionally, investigators found evidence that contradicted Barry's claim of having a steak dinner with his wife. They discovered only one dirty dish, suggesting that Barry had eaten alone. As the investigation continued, more unusual occurrences were discovered on their plot of land. The police found additional suspicious details while reviewing the data from later that night. 1 hour after Barry claimed to have gone to sleep with his wife at 8:30 p.m., his car was seen backing up 96 feet from the driveway at 9:30 p.m. This led investigators to speculate that this could be when Barry loaded his wife's body into the truck. If he was indeed guilty. Furthermore, the records showed that between 3:25 and 3:48, the truck door opened and closed over 80 times, which, although indirect, suggested that Barry might be hiding something from the police, causing them must dig deeper into the incident that occurred on May 10th. Investigations involving Barry co-workers revealed that he had no reason to be in Broomfield on the day in question. The contract didn't start until a week later, so there was no project to inspect. Barry initially claimed that his only activities that day involved visiting the Holiday Inn, the work site for an upcoming project, a store for granola and water, and a stop at McDonald's to clean his windshield. However, surveillance footage obtained by the Colorado Bureau of Investigation contradicted his story. The footage showed that Barry disposed of 5 trash bags near the Holiday Inn and McDonald's. This increases suspicion about his actions. When police questioned Barry about the footage of him disposing of trash bags large, he gave an unusual explanation. He claimed that he wanted to avoid paying for disposal fees so he could clean his car. However, his story fell apart when officers searched his vehicle. Barry's suspicious behavior was further highlighted by a coworker who reported a strong smell of bleach and chlorine in his hotel room a day after Suzanne disappeared. In addition, investigators found that Barry had changed his clothes multiple times throughout that day. Investigators then delved deeper into Barry and Suzanne's personal lives. Their daughter revealed that her parents' marriage was not as happy as Barry had initially suggested. Text messages on Suzanne's phone confirmed this. Suzanne was deeply unhappy in the marriage and discussed her desire for a divorce, which Barry refused. Suzanne kept a list of grievances in her notes app, detailing a pattern of physical abuse by her husband Barry. She expressed fear of being alone with him and was concerned about his heavy drinking and attempts to take her phone. Suzanne also suspected him of being unfaithful. In an attempt to catch him in the act, she purchased a pen with a hidden recording device, but it ironically captured evidence of her own affair instead. The investigation revealed that Suzanne had been having an affair with a man named Jeff, a high school acquaintance, for about a year and a half, starting in 2018. Although Jeff initially appeared to be a potential suspect, he was later cleared of any involvement in Suzanne's disappearance. However, investigators discovered a note that suggested Barry had found out about the affair and might have accused her of having a boyfriend just 2 days before she went missing. During their search of the Suzanne house, police uncovered several crucial pieces of evidence, including the cap of a tranquilizer dart in the dryer and the spent bullet casing in the bedroom. They also found a large crack in the doorframe and a charred remnant of Suzanne's journal in the fireplace. These findings, combined with telematic data, suggested that Barry might have planned killed Suzanne on May 9, 2020. Phone records from Suzanne's phone supported her initial story. After texting Jeff 53 times and sending a selfie at approximately 2:10 p.m., the phone showed no further activity. It wasn't until 2 weeks later that the public discovered Barry was a suspect in his wife's disappearance. This revelation came when police excavated a construction site in Salida, one of Barry's job sites, over the course of 2 days. In response, Barry released a video to the public maintaining his innocence. It was not until May 5, 2021, nearly a year into the investigation, that Barry was arrested. While the evidence against him was largely circumstantial, the prosecution felt confident in their case. Due to the inconsistencies in Barry's alibis, his repeated lies, and a clear motive. Barry was charged with multiple crimes, including the first-degree murder of his wife, tampering with physical evidence, possessing a dangerous weapon, and attempting to influence a public servant. Barry accepted the charges and paid a $600 fine. A preliminary hearing took place in August 2021 to decide if the case should go to trial, at which point most of the case details were made public. The prosecution presented its evidence over 4 days, outlining its theory of the incident. They claimed that on May 9, 2020, Barry killed his wife, dismembered her body in a hotel room, disposed of the tools, and buried her remains in an unmarked grave. However, Barry's defense strongly challenged the prosecution's narrative, pointing out inconsistencies in their story. They cited that cadaver dogs found no signs of human remains in Barry's car or the hotel room where he supposedly brought the body. The defense also raised doubts about the dart bullet cover, suggesting it may have been planted. Furthermore, the defense argued that Barry's dart gun was broken at the time, making it impossible for him to use it in the murder. The defense team's apparently piece of evidence was partial DNA found in Suzanne's Range Rover and on her bike helmet, which didn't match Barry. What made this discovery significant was that the DNA in her car matched DNA profiles from 3 unsolved sexual assault cases in Chicago and Arizona. This raised doubt about Barry's guilt. However, the CBI investigator in charge of the case was unable to present this crucial evidence earlier because he had to take a leave of absence for military service before. It wasn't until September 7th that the judge decided to move forward with the case, setting Barry's bail at $500,000. He was released from county jail on September 20th, 2021. However, in a surprising move, the prosecution filed a motion to dismiss all charges against Barry without prejudice. At the time, the prosecution faced several challenges, including a lack of concrete evidence, as no body had been found. Additionally, the prosecution had missed multiple deadlines, resulting in the exclusion of 14 key witnesses from the trial. Barry was seen leaving the courthouse with his two daughters, visibly relieved. Nearly 2 years later, on September 22, 2023, investigators made a breakthrough in the case when they discovered several shallow graves in Moffat, Colorado. Suzanne's remains were identified through dental records and a chemotherapy port, found over 50 miles away from the initial search area. The discovery of Suzanne's body has raised fresh questions about Barry's potential involvement in her murder. Although the charges against him were previously dismissed, the new evidence has led many to wonder if he could still be considered a suspect in the case. Some people question how Barry could have disposed of the body without being in Moffat on May 9th and 10th, suggesting he might have had help. For now, Barry does not appear to be directly involved in where his wife's body was found. The police and district attorney's office continue to investigate the case. The 12th Judicial District's district attorney stated that they cannot comment on the case until more information becomes available. While offering condolences to Suzanne's family, Barry's attorney, Iris E.T. Yen, speculates that Suzanne might have been the victim of a serial killer. After finding her remains in a cemetery, Iris thinks that law enforcement wrongly accused Barry and hopes that they will admit their mistake. Barry has initiated a $15 million lawsuit against the prosecutors, sheriff stations, and investigators because he was wrongly accused in the disappearance and death of his wife. Hello again, true crime fans. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Greg Mulvihill. Greg Mulvihill and Diana met on a dating website in 2005. Both living far from their families, they decided to move to San Diego together. Diana had been passionate about fitness since she was young, playing sports in high school and eventually becoming a triathlete as an adult. Their love of the outdoors and fitness brought them closer together. 2000s, Diana and Greg both were highly skilled professionals and achieved great success in their careers. Diana was considered extremely trustworthy by her peers. Diana and Greg first met in 2005, and 2 years later, they decided to get married, marking the beginning of their new life together. They chose Costa Rica for their honeymoon, where they had the opportunity to learn to surf. In the early days of their marriage, they made the most of their time together, experiencing many exciting adventures together. After their wedding, Diana and Greg moved to Carlsbad, a suburb north of San Diego. The area has a mix of lagoons, hiking trails, hills, and secluded spots. Diana was immediately drawn to the area. She enjoyed the quiet atmosphere and the beautiful scenery around her. 3 years after their wedding, Diana was diagnosed with fibromyalgia, a chronic condition that affects millions of people worldwide. Fibromyalgia is characterized by pain and tenderness throughout the body. While the exact cause of fibromyalgia is unknown, there are a number of factors that may contribute to the condition. To help her cope with her fibromyalgia, Greg took her on a relaxing vacation to Santa Cruz, California in 2011. Greg was a caring husband who understood the impact fibromyalgia had on Diana's life. The condition caused constant muscle pain, fatigue, and limited her energy, making it difficult for her to maintain a job. Diana's ongoing health struggles eventually led her to give up her career. With more time at home, she longed to become a mother. Diana and Greg tried for years to have children. But Diana suffered multiple miscarriages. The loss of these pregnancies affected Diana, both physically and emotionally. Although Diana did not have children, she had two cats, Lanny and Turtle, whom she loved dearly. One day, Turtle became ill and passed away. To help Diana through this, Greg adopted a kitten for her, whom she named Taffy. Greg's gift helped Diana greatly. After years of trying to conceive without success, Diana was shocked to discover that she was pregnant. Greg was overjoyed and eager to become a father. Diana shared the same sentiment, feeling that her dream of becoming a mother was slowly coming true. In September 2012, Diana gave birth to a baby boy. After the baby was born, Greg took time off work to care for his newborn son. He was very happy and cherished every moment with his son. Diana, on the other hand, was worried about her son's health, wanting him to be happy and healthy. Over time, Diana began to suspect that her son might have a condition similar to her fibromyalgia. However, Greg believed that their son was healthy. Despite their differing opinions, Diana remained convinced that their son had the disease. Diana began extensive research and discovered guaifenesin, a drug commonly used to treat chest infections. Some believe that guaifenesin can help relieve the symptoms of fibromyalgia, leading Diana to consider giving her son a high dose of the drug. However, Greg was against giving his son the drug. The disagreements between Diana and Greg over how to care for their son added to the tension and pressure in their marriage. When Greg injured his shoulder and lost his job, tensions escalated. With her income reduced, Diana sought a sales position to supplement the family income. She also tried to generate income through online cooking videos, with Greg helping behind the camera, but the project failed. Diana then made promotional videos featuring cat litter, but these also failed to bring in the desired financial returns. When their son turned 2, the constant arguments and disagreements between Diana and Greg over their son's health issues continued to cause tension. They found themselves unable to find common ground. Diana confided in a coworker about her feelings of frustration and lack of support from Greg, revealing a deep rift between them. In July 2014, police questioned Greg about Diana's allegations of abuse. According to police, Diana filed several police reports regarding Greg's actions. As a result of these accusations, Greg was evicted from the home, while Diana and their son were allowed to stay. Diana confided in a friend about Greg's abuse, saying that the incident occurred while she was sleeping. According to Diana, her medication made her drowsy, and when she woke up, she found Greg touching her without her consent. Additionally, Diana accused Greg of sexually abusing their son. These allegations led to the involvement of Child Protective Services. Greg denied the allegations, believing that Diana fabricated the complaints because he disagreed with her about their son's health status. In response, Greg filed for divorce and sought custody of their son. The police searched for evidence to support claims of abuse against Greg and his son. Ultimately, a judge ordered both Greg and the boy to undergo psychiatric evaluations. After an investigation, the evaluations found no evidence of child abuse by Greg. Additionally, the police found no evidence that Greg had assaulted Diana. As a result, the charges against Greg were dropped and he was given custody of their son, a decision that upset Diana. In a subsequent settlement, Diana agreed to live in their home and compensate Greg for his share of the property. On September 1, 2016, the Carlsbad Police Department received a call from Jason Kovac, a close friend of Greg's. Jason reported that Greg had been shot multiple times and was losing a lot of blood. At the time Jason called 911, a Carlsbad police patrol officer was nearby. When they arrived, the officer found Jason and Greg on the side of the road. Jason explained to the officer that the shooting had occurred about a half-mile away from their current location. The officer quickly realized that waiting for an ambulance would put Greg's life in greater danger. In order to get Greg to the emergency room as soon as possible, the officer placed Greg in the back of his car and took him to the hospital. Meanwhile, just minutes later, the officer had surrounded the area and began searching for the shooter. Despite their best efforts, they were unable to locate the shooter. At the hospital, doctors immediately rushed Greg into emergency surgery, where they discovered he had a gunshot wound to the chest. Greg survived the surgery. However, he was placed on life support and was expected to regain consciousness on his own. The police spoke to Jason about the incident. Jason, willing to share what he knew, explained that Greg had called the night of the incident. He told Jason that he had received a call from a private investigator who said to have important information for his upcoming divorce and custody battle with Diana. The anonymous inspector provided a specific time and place to meet. Initially unsure about the phone call, Greg's curiosity eventually won out. Greg then asked Jason to come to the agreed location with him. Concerned for Greg's safety, Jason agreed, and they prepared by bringing flashlights and baseball bats for protection. Greg and Jason arrived at the remote location indicated by the mysterious caller, but the darkness made it difficult to see. There were no street lights, making it extremely dark. The caller informed Greg that the package containing the documents would be attached to a large utility pole. Upon discovering the package, Greg approached the pole while holding a flashlight, slowly scanning the surrounding area with the light. Jason noticed that Greg's flashlight suddenly focused on something in the bushes. Greg immediately yelled, "Gun!" A gunshot rang out, causing Greg and Jason to quickly flee the scene. Bullets whizzed past their heads as they ran toward their car. When they reached the car, Jason realized that Greg had been shot. Jason quickly called 911. But was unable to provide a detailed description of the shooter to the police. However, he was able to lead them to the exact location of the shooting. During the investigation, police searched the area where the shooting occurred and focused on a utility pole, as the caller had told Greg to retrieve a package from that location. Near the pole, police discovered a neatly folded towel. Police found this suspicious and wondered if someone had intentionally left the towel behind to trick Greg into thinking it was a package he was supposed to retrieve. According to Jason's testimony, he reported hearing up to 6 gunshots at the scene, but police were unable to find any shell casings or weapons. The lack of forensic evidence led investigators to believe that the shooter may have had extensive experience and knowledge of weapons, allowing them to avoid leaving any evidence of the crime. As police searched the area where Greg was shot, they noticed a distinct smell of feces in the air. Further investigation revealed a pile of feces along with a towel nearby, which appeared to have been used to clean up after someone had defecated. Both the stool and towel samples were preserved and sent to the crime lab for forensic analysis in an attempt to find clues or potential evidence related to the shooting. However, the process of collecting DNA evidence is time-consuming, and it took up to a month to develop a DNA profile from the stool and towel samples. While waiting for the DNA results, the police continued their efforts to find the shooter. They examined all available evidence, followed up on potential leads, and thoroughly investigated several individuals. The police focused on Greg's estranged wife, Diana. The police asked Diana to come to the police station for questioning. They wanted to know if she knew of a private investigator who had worked with her husband, Greg, on matters related to their divorce. Diana claimed that she knew nothing about the detective and said that she no longer spoke to Greg. She also gave an alibi, saying she was home with her son at the time of the shooting. When questioned further, Diana said she could not think of anything else to add and could not identify anyone who might have been involved in the crime. Greg regained consciousness and began his recovery. As his health improved, the police interviewed him about the incident. They asked about his wife Diana and her possible involvement in the shooting. Greg admitted that he and Diana had a troubled history and were in the midst of a tense divorce and custody battle over their son. He suspected that Diana might have been involved in the shooting. Greg also said he had no enemies and did not know who might be behind the shooting. Early in the investigation, the police investigated the phone number that had called Greg. The number was on a pay-as-you-go plan, indicating that it did not belong to anyone. However, the police were successful in obtaining information from the cell phone carrier, which led them to a Best Buy near Carlsbad where the phone was purchased. The police immediately contacted the store manager to request information about the purchase, including the date of the transaction. They also requested any available video footage of the person who purchased the phone. After reviewing hours of video footage, the manager identified relevant footage that corresponded to the time of purchase of the phone. The footage was sent to the police for review. Although the video was grainy, the police were able to identify Diana, Greg's wife, in the footage. This new information made Diana the prime suspect in Greg's shooting. Diana was arrested, and during her arrest, Diana repeatedly maintained her innocence. The police then questioned Diana about her purchases at Best Buy. They discovered that she had purchased a cell phone, which then called Greg, leading to his shooting. However, Diana initially told the police that she had purchased a router. Faced with a surveillance camera image of the person who purchased the cell phone, who looked exactly like her, Diana admitted the truth. Following this revelation, Diana changed her story about her involvement in Greg's shooting. She said that her fear of Greg prompted her to buy a gun, which led her to practice at a local shooting range called Iron Sights. At Iron Sights, Diana claimed she met an instructor named Weldon McDavid, who taught her how to shoot. Weldon was a former Marine with expertise in firearms. Diana reportedly told Weldon about her difficult divorce and custody battle with Greg, which led to a close friendship between Diana and Weldon that eventually turned into love. Diana told police that she and Weldon had devised a plan. To carry out the plan, Weldon told Diana to buy a phone and use it to lure Greg to a remote location. Weldon's job was to intimidate Greg without using force. Diana admitted to driving Weldon to the location and picking him up. However, when she heard police sirens approaching in the distance, she asked about the situation. Weldon later revealed to her that he had shot Greg in self-defense because Greg had been aggressive toward him. She denied any involvement in the shooting and insisted that she had never asked Weldon to commit any acts of violence against her husband Greg. Diana was charged with attempted murder after admitting her role in the incident involving Greg. Fortunately, Greg quickly recovered from the gunshot wound to the chest and was released from hospital shortly afterwards. The police tracked down Weldon and brought him in for questioning. When the police asked about his relationship with Diana and his whereabouts on the night of the shooting, Weldon claimed he was at home, about 30 minutes from Carlsbad. The police then asked Weldon for a DNA sample, which made him visibly nervous as he realized they were getting closer to the truth. When asked if his DNA might have been present at the crime scene, Weldon feigned surprise and suddenly remembered something, saying it was a recent memory. Weldon told police that the night before the shooting, he had gone jogging due to stomach problems after eating Mexican food for dinner. He claimed to have stopped on a dirt road to use the restroom. Based on this information, police obtained a search warrant for Weldon's home. Their search turned up a rifle with a live bullet and 6 fired casings in the rafters. The 6 casings confirmed Jason Kack's account of hearing 6 gunshots. As a result, Weldon was arrested and charged with attempted murder and attempted murder. Police searched Diana's home with a warrant and examined her computer. They discovered a search history for the phrase, "new moon." Notably, the night Greg was shot, September 1st, coincided with a new moon, when the surrounding light was very dim. By carefully analyzing Diana's search history, police were able to conclude that she had prior knowledge of the shooting. Her interest in the new moon suggested that she intended to take advantage of the lack of ambient light to facilitate the murder of her husband. Further investigation revealed Diana's motive for killing Greg. As part of the divorce settlement, Diana was required to pay Greg $120,000 for their home. Faced with the possibility of not being able to make payments on time, Diana may have seen getting rid of Greg as a way to avoid paying the money. In October 2017, the trial of Diana Lovejoy and Weldon McDavid began. The jury returned a guilty verdict, convicting Diana and Weldon of conspiracy to commit murder and attempted murder. Upon hearing the verdict, Diana collapsed to the ground. Weldon was sentenced to 50 years in prison, while Diana received a sentence of 26 years in prison. Both defendants maintained their innocence despite the guilty verdict. Hey detectives! Welcome back. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Shauna Nelson. Heather is a girl with a cheerful, sweet, and innocent personality. Her beauty was characterized by white skin, rosy lips, and dark hair, which captivated Ignacio, who affectionately called her his Snow White. When Ignacio asked her out on their first date, Heather was overjoyed. She eagerly shared the news with her roommates. Heather's friends were particularly thrilled for her, as she hadn't had much dating experience before, and they thought this could be the start of something special. Heather and Ignacio's bond grew stronger. Ignacio consistently showed his care and thoughtfulness by surprising Heather with her favorite flowers and coffee. His considerate nature made Heather feel loved and appreciated. After Ignacio graduated from the University of Northern Colorado, he decided to propose to Heather. She happily accepted his proposal. However, Heather made one condition clear: if Ignacio ever cheated on her, she would end their marriage immediately, regardless of any apologies or attempts to make amends. She would not tolerate infidelity in their relationship. After making her stance clear, Heather and Ignacio decided to get married within a year of their engagement. Their wedding was a beautiful and joyful celebration. Ignacio began working as a law enforcement officer at the Greeley, Colorado Police Department, while Heather worked as a supervisor at the local credit union. She quickly gained the admiration and respect of her colleagues and customers alike. They appreciated her exceptional ability to comfort credit union members during difficult times. A coworker described Heather as wonderful all the way around, reflecting her kind and caring nature. After 5 years of marriage, Heather and Ignacio welcomed their beautiful firstborn daughter, Victoria. Heather's world was filled with joy as she became a mother. Ignacio also proved to be an outstanding father. From the outside, their life seemed perfect. A picture of happiness and contentment. Heather's life took a big change in 1997 when her father suddenly passed away from a heart attack. Just a few days later, her mother received a devastating cancer diagnosis. Despite the immense grief, Heather remained committed to caring for her mother, selflessly dedicating herself to supporting she over the next several years, until she passing in 2003. During this challenging period, Heather's husband, Ignacio, played a supportive role, caring for their daughter, Victoria, and helping with household responsibilities. However, as time passed, he began to develop an interest in a new woman, Shauna Nelson, a dispatcher at the Greeley Police Department. Shauna was already married to Ken, a Weld County Sheriff's deputy, and they had 2 children. The couple's marriage, however, was struggling. Ken believed their relationship problems began when she returned to work after giving birth to their second child. Initially, the connection between she and Ignacio was friendly. But it soon evolved into a flirtatious exchange of comments and playful banter, marks the beginning of an extramarital affair. Shauna's compliments had a profound effect on Ignacio, captivating him and sparking a deep attraction. As they spent more time together, their initially friendly interactions developed into a deep love affair. Ignacio's feelings for Shauna continued to intensify, transforming from casual flirting to a passionate and intimate bond. Despite being married, they couldn't resist their strong attraction to each other. As Ignacio and Shauna's secret relationship became the subject of local gossip, Heather remained unaware of the affair. No one was willing to inform her, resulting in the relationship between Ignacio and Shauna growing stronger, while Heather remained in the dark. Shauna soon discovered she was pregnant and she shared the news with Ignacio, but his reaction surprised her. Instead of being overjoyed, Ignacio questioned the paternity of the baby, wondering if it was his or her husband Ken's child. Shauna told Ignacio that her husband had a vasectomy after their second child, so Ken cannot be the father of the child she is carrying in her belly. However, Ignacio, knowing that his wife Heather would be furious if she found out about Shauna's pregnancy, Ignacio became anxious. He didn't want the baby, and he desperately looked for a way out. Shauna agreed with Ignacio's plan, and he convinced her to have an abortion. He then drove her to the clinic for the procedure. Years passed, and Heather remained unaware of her husband's affair with Shauna. However, Shauna grew impatient and eventually decided to confront Heather. One day, Shauna and her friend Michelle Moore followed Heather to the grocery store, keeping a safe distance as they observed her. Heather, still unaware of their emergence, talked to a friend on the phone. Shauna eventually approached Heather and started yelling insults and accusations at her. Heather was deeply shaken after a disturbing encounter with Shauna at the grocery store. She recognized Shauna as her husband Ignacio's co-worker from the police department, whom she had met at several work Christmas parties. Heather asked Ignacio why Shauna, who had always been friendly to her, would suddenly lash out with hurtful words. Ignacio explained that Shauna had developed a crush on him, but assured Heather that she had nothing to worry about. Ignacio stepped in to address the issue, telling Shauna to leave Heather alone. He spoke to Shauna directly, but she became angry with him. However, Ignacio's intervention failed to stop Shauna's harassment, as she continued to bother Heather. Shauna once arrived unexpectedly at Heather and Ignacio's home, demanding to see Ignacio. Heather attempts to brush off the suspicion of an improper relationship between her husband and Shauna, his co-worker, but she can't shake the feeling that something is wrong. Unbeknownst to Heather, Shauna had confided in a colleague at the county dispatch center about her affair with Ignacio. Shauna claims to be deeply in love with Ignacio, saying she felt more strongly for him than for anyone else she had ever met. However, she also expressed her frustration that Heather stood in the way of their relationship. Shauna revealed to her supervisor that she would often visit the shooting range to manage her frustrations. While target shooting, Shauna would imagine that the targets were Heather. Meanwhile, Shauna's husband, Ken, remained unaware that his wife had been having an affair with Ignacio for years, until he discovered a diary detailing her relationship. Despite this, Ken chose to stay in the marriage for the sake of their children, rather than leaving Shauna after learning of her infidelity. Shauna was aware that she was not the only woman in Ignacio's life. He was having an affair with another woman, and this realization led Shauna to closely monitor his actions. Determined to be the only woman he was involved with, she threatened to tell Heather everything if he ever left her. As time passed, Shauna's fixation on Ignacio grew stronger. In an attempt to cement her place in his life, Shauna got a tattoo of his family name on her leg in July 2005. Her obsession, however, soon turned into an unhealthy fixation that led to her stalking him. Whenever Heather and Ignacio took their daughter, Victoria, out to a restaurant, Shauna and her family would coincidentally show up. Ignacio noticed the alarming shift in Shauna's behavior but chose to continue their illicit relationship despite his growing unease. When Shauna discovered she was pregnant with Ignacio's child for the second time, she immediately informed him she intended to keep the baby. Shauna gave birth to their son, Christian, in March 2006. However, Due to Ignacio's wife being unaware of the situation, Ken proposed a solution. He would raise Christian as his own, provided Shauna remained his wife. Shauna agreed to the arrangement. In the summer of 2006, a woman approached Heather with unexpected news. Shauna Nelson had given birth to Ignacio's child. Heather was stunned and confused by this revelation. Upon returning home, Heather confronted her husband, Ignacio, about the child, seeking answers. Ignacio attempted to conceal his affair with Shauna, lying to his wife once again. Heather maintained her trust in Ignacio until one night in December 2006, when she woke up to find him gone. As she waited for his return, she became increasingly anxious. When Ignacio finally came back home, Heather confronted him immediately. Unlike his past responses, Ignacio chose to be honest this time. He confessed to spending the night with Shauna and revealed that the affair had been ongoing for years. He also shared that Shauna had been pregnant with his child twice and had recently given birth to their son. Following Ignacio's confession, Heather took the action she had previously threatened. She ended their relationship and asked him to leave the house. However, her deep-seated desire to keep her family together led her to reconsider and call Ignacio the next day. Despite her initial shock, anger, and skepticism, Heather's priority was keeping her family intact. She feared that ending the relationship would have a negative impact on their daughter Victoria, forcing her daughter to grow up in a household with divorced parents. Heather had a conversation with Ignacio about their feelings for each other. Heather lets him know that she still loves him, and she believes he does too. Heather wanted to save their marriage and made it clear that she did not plan to file for divorce. However, she also made it clear that she was not ready to immediately reconcile. Before considering reconciling, Heather presented Ignacio with several requirements. First, she asked him to take an STD test to ensure his health. Additionally, Heather also suggested that they attend counseling together to help them work through the difficulties of repairing the relationship and working through any issues that led to his affair. She asked Ignacio to relinquish his father rights to Shauna's baby, and she wanted him to end his relationship with Shauna altogether. Ignacio, determined to save his marriage, accepted all the conditions Heather set in order. He took responsibility for his wrongdoing and was willing to make things right. As part of the agreement, Ignacio called Shauna and ended their affair. Heather was present and listened to the entire conversation. Shortly after Ignacio hung up the phone, Heather received a text message on her cell phone. The message included a photo of Shauna and Ignacio's son, Christian, with the caption, "IGS Flesh and Blood," beneath it. Shauna was furious about the sudden end to her relationship with Ignacio, who chose to stay with Heather instead. Feeling betrayed and abandoned, her anger intensified. In response, Shauna began publicly talking about suing Ignacio for Christian's financial support in early 2007. Ignacio and Heather were working to repair their marriage after his infidelity. Despite their challenges, the couple was determined to move forward. However, Ignacio's former mistress, Shauna, continued to harass Heather, making reconciliation difficult. Shauna's behavior became more and more aggressive, prompting Ignacio and Heather to take action. To protect Heather's car from potential damage by Shauna, they started parking it in the garage. They also sought help from a lawyer, who sent Shauna a formal notice requiring her to stay away from Ignacio, Heather, and their daughter, Victoria. The notice clearly stated that Shauna was to stop harassing and intimidating the family but she ignored the warning. Instead, she persisted in sending Heather malicious messages via text, email, and voicemail to intimidate and provoke Heather. On January 23, 2007, at around 6 p.m., Heather was walking out of her workplace at the credit union. It was just after 6 p.m. As she walked out of the building with her co-workers into the dark parking lot, she was looking forward to a quiet night at home with her daughter. But her evening took a terrifying turn when a person dressed in black and wearing a Halloween mask approached the group, aiming a gun directly at Heather. The gunman appeared to be targeting Heather specifically, and as others in the group tried to seek cover, the gunman ordered Heather to kneel down and pointed the gun at her head. Right before pulling the trigger, the gunman expressed a personal vendetta, saying, "You ruined my life," and then shot Heather twice at close range. The gunshot wounds were fatal and inflicted in an execution-style manner. After shooting Heather, the gunman quickly escaped in a nearby red pickup truck. Meanwhile, Heather's co-workers and other witnesses immediately called 911 for help. Minutes later, paramedics arrived at the scene, but unfortunately, Heather did not make it. Due to the severity of the head injuries, Heather was pronounced dead at the scene. When police officers arrived at the crime scene, a parking lot, they were shocked to discover that the shooting victim was Heather, the wife of their co-worker Ignacio. Recognizing the victim, the officers immediately notified Ignacio and instructed him to go to the hospital. Upon arrival, Ignacio rushed through the hospital hallways to reach Heather's trauma room, but he was stopped by a doctor who delivered heart-wrenching news: Heather had passed away. The news was devastating for Ignacio, and he was now faced with the difficult task of informing their 9-year-old daughter, Victoria, about her mother's passing. As the investigation continued, witnesses at the crime scene shared their accounts of the events. One witness reported seeing the shooter suddenly appear and then flee in a red pickup truck, while another suggested that the shooter might have been a woman, based on their running style. Shauna Nelson has become the prime suspect in the investigation, linked to Heather's harassment. It was also mentioned that Shauna may have had a motive for the shooting, because she had an affair with Ignacio. The police officers at the crime scene were already familiar with Shauna and her husband, Ken, a police officer. What drew their attention was the fact that Ken owned a car similar to the one used by the shooter. As the evidence against Shauna grew, police sent out an alert to all units, focusing on Shauna and the red pickup truck she was driving. Ken was on duty that night and was driving patrol car when he received a radio alert about his wife and vehicle. He quickly began looking for his wife. 20 minutes later, he found her driving his vehicle close to their home. She explained that she had been out running errands, but he became suspicious when he noticed that she wasn't wearing shoes, which seemed unusual considering it was January in Colorado. It will be very cold. What further raised Ken's suspicions was that Shauna was wearing his clothing, including his socks, underwear, and pants. After stopping Shauna, he called for assistance and the police soon arrived to take her into custody. The authorities then launched an investigation to determine if Shauna had any involvement in Heather's murder. Investigators made several key proof in their investigation. They found a pair of shoes with Shauna's DNA near the crime scene, less than 1,000 feet away. In the parking lot where Heather was shot, they recovered 2 shell casings from a .40 caliber Glock Model 22, the same type of gun used by Ken for his job. This new evidence strengthened the case against Shauna. The investigation also turned up a Halloween mask hidden under the seat of Ken's red pickup truck. The mask closely resembled the one worn by the suspect in the shooting of Heather. At Shauna's home, investigators found a bathtub filled and ready for use, suggesting that Shauna may have planned to wash off any blood after the crime. After Shauna's arrest, her clothing and hands were tested for gunshot residue. The results were positive, showing that she had recently been around a gun. With this new evidence, Shauna was eventually charged with first-degree murder. Despite matching shell casings from the murder weapon, the actual gun used to kill Heather was never recovered. The reason for this was partly due to the actions of Ken, who stopped Shauna after the murder but failed to detain her. As a result, Ken was charged with destruction of evidence and abetting first-degree murder. During her police interrogation, Shauna provided an alibi for her whereabouts at the time of the murder. She explained that she had put on some of her husband's dirty clothes from the laundry basket, which is why she was wearing them. Shauna claimed she went to the store, realized she forgot her wallet, and then drove back home. However, when questioned about Heather's murder, Shauna denied any involvement or knowledge of the crime. Ignacio was also questioned by the police but was eventually cleared of suspicion in February 2008. Shauna's trial for the murder of Heather began, with Shauna pleading not guilty to the charges. The prosecution argued that Shauna's fixation with Ignacio, a married police officer, was the primary motivation behind her murder of Heather, and that this was not Shauna's first affair with a married officer. The state negotiated a deal with Michelle Moore, a key witness and Shauna's former best friend. Michelle often accompanied Shauna when she would intimidate and harass Heather. In exchange for a reduced sentence, Michelle agreed to testify against Shauna. During her testimony, Michelle made it clear how much Shauna disliked Heather and even confessed that she helped plan the murder. In contrast, Shauna took the stand in her own defense, strongly denying all allegations against her. Shauna specifically denied having conversations about her fantasies of killing Heather or picturing Heather in her mind during target practice with others. She also claimed to have had no involvement in the killing itself, stating she was on her way to a liquor store at the time of the shooting. As part of her defense, Shauna proposed an alternative explanation for Heather's murder. She suggested that Michelle might have killed Heather to make her happy. However, when Michelle was questioned further, she dismissed Shauna's claims. The prosecution alleged that Shauna dressed in her husband's clothes during the shooting to frame him for the crime. The state claimed that by killing Heather, Shauna and Ignacio would be able to start a new life together. After 5 hours of deliberation, the jury found Shauna guilty of first-degree murder. The judge addressed Shauna, stating that she deserved the sentence she received. Shauna's former friend, Michelle, was sentenced to 9 years in prison for her role in planning Heather's murder. Following Shauna's conviction, her husband Ken resigned from the police department, filed for divorce, and moved out of state with their children. However, he eventually returned to Colorado and expressed hope that their children would one day visit Shauna in prison. Despite the circumstances, Ken believed that Shauna was a caring and wonderful mother. Heather's family is relieved Shauna is in custody and they feel justice has been served. Her loved ones hope Shauna will spend the rest of her life reflecting on the suffering she caused Heather. Shauna's actions had dire consequences. She separated Heather from her loved ones, ultimately depriving the love, care, and nurturing that a mother would give to her daughter, Victoria. Unfortunately, when Victoria, 17 years old, she died in a car accident in 2015. Her vehicle crashed into a tree after she lost control, resulting in her untimely death.